Good evening, everybody. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act, was provided through the posting, mailing, and filing of the annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings of the Town Council on December 13, 2022. The notice was on that date posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, provided to the Westfield Leader and the Star Ledger, and filed with the clerk of the town of Westfield. Mrs. Lashy, may I have a roll call?
Mayor Brindle?
Here.
Council members Hadgood?
Here.
Parmalee? McGrippo?
Here.
Katz?
Here.
Mackey? Here. Contract?
Here.
Dardia?
Here.
Root?
Here.
Please rise for the invocation, which will be given by council in contract, and remain standing for the salute to the flag.
We gather tonight to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So good evening. No reports from you today, right, Jim? So we're just going to get right into it. Good evening. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Thanks to everyone who's joining us tonight, both in person and online. As a reminder, public comment will be accepted in person only, and we're live streaming for viewing only on Facebook. As always, the replay is always available on Facebook, TV 36, YouTube, and YouTube. So, with the vast interest in tonight's vote on the Lord and Taylor train station redevelopment plan, I'd like to take a few minutes to provide a bit of context and background on this complex project, which touches on a variety of issues: downtown vitality, economic impact, traffic, revenue opportunity, financial risk mitigation, scale density, and more. The significant level of engagements that we've had with our residents, business owners, and downtown property owners is exactly what we had always hoped for. However, the forest has often gotten lost through the trees when discussing the many details of this proposal. So I do want to take a moment to just recap how we got here and what the proposal is aiming to solve. The One Westfield Place proposal is the culmination of 4 years of planning and collaboration with HBC Streetworks, and is the result of the public's input into a new master plan reexamination that was unanimously adopted by the planning board and supported by the town council, and then along with subsequent input Streetworks received from numerous community groups with whom they met prior to the proposal's September introduction. Each of these planning milestones was discussed publicly and often, always with the goal of ensuring and encouraging resident engagement in the process. As the Westfield Leader noted in their editorial last week, any notion that any of this was a secret is bull. In addition to the importance of public input, we have been guided by a top-tier team of redevelopment professionals in finance, law, parking, traffic, and planning. Most of them are here tonight, all of whom have proceeded with the town's long-term best interests as their top priority. I recognize that we have many Westfield residents who are also professionals in these areas, and we have welcomed their input and received their full support in many instances. We are fortunate to have 2 long-term residents as part of our team of professionals, and a Westfield resident also led the master plan reexamination process, his residency being a key reason why his firm was chosen. I say this to reiterate how important it has been to have the proposal reflect the voice and desires of Westfield residents, but at the end of the day, recognizing that it's not possible to govern by committee. As elected officials, our obligation is to represent the interests of the community at large, and we believe the current One Westfield Place proposal, with the recent modifications made in response to public feedback, does just that. There's no such thing as a perfect project, but we have strived to find a balanced proposal that addresses long-standing challenges that have gone ignored for decades while mitigating any potential negative impacts. Recommendations of a 1999 downtown improvement plan submitted by the DWC to the Town Council and Planning Board were largely ignored, which included, in 1999, increasing building height and density, developing the Lord and Taylor employee parking lots, evaluating every municipal parking lot for mixed-use redevelopment in collaboration with private developers, and redeveloping the South Avenue Business District into a more pedestrian-friendly commercial corridor to include structured parking and office buildings. Sound familiar? What followed was kicking the can down the road, which finally caught up with us 15 years ago, resulting in many downtown vacant storefronts while surrounding communities were thriving. As previous administrations discovered, it's so much easier to say no than to get to yes. But most of us on this dais did not seek office to maintain the status quo. We are elected to solve problems, and ensuring the long-term vibrancy of our downtown has always been a publicly stated top priority. So while some may disagree on the how, I am confident most agree on the goal of One Westfield Place: to deliver a downtown for the future, one that will feature a vibrant commercial hub for generations to enjoy, resolve long-standing traffic, parking, and congestion challenges, providing engaging spaces for community gathering, art, and events, and result in unprecedented new sources of commercial tax revenue. It is designed to celebrate the best of Westfield and reaffirm the town's long-standing reputation as one of the premier places to live in the state, anchored by a downtown that serves as a national model for a post-COVID Main Street community, one that meets the needs and desires of all residents and downtown businesses, including those who have been here for generations and those who have just arrived. But very importantly, One Westfield Place is a proposal that delivers over $350 million in private investment in our downtown, $54 million in public improvements, restores many of the 2,000 jobs that have been lost since 2015, and provides the ability to stabilize and potentially lower taxes over the long term. Those are outcomes that every resident should welcome. I also want to remind everybody that tonight's vote on the redevelopment plan is by no means the final step in this process, and there's still a long way to go. If the RDP is approved tonight, many of the specific details will then be ironed out when the project is submitted for site plan approval with the planning board later this year. There will be no shovels in the ground until late next year at the earliest. So before we get started for tonight's agenda, I'd like to briefly review the procedures for tonight's meeting, which is a bit different than maybe what we've done before, because it's an ordinance we're adopting. The ordinance related to One Westfield Place that we are voting on tonight is for final adoption of a redevelopment plan. As with any ordinance on second reading, we are required to hold a public hearing on the ordinance, with discussion and questions limited to its relevant specifics. So in this case, the RDP is a zoning ordinance, and comments should be related to topics it encompasses, such as height, density, massing, etc. The redevelopment plan does not cover issues such as the approval process, finance details, pilots, referenda, etc. And those comments should be reserved for the standard public comment period that will come later in the meeting. So we'll close the public hearing on this ordinance. We'll then follow the hearing and vote on it, and then we open up the rest of the agenda, which will include public comment, as we always have. So anyone who comes to the microphone to speak during the ordinance hearing on a topic unrelated to the RDP will be asked to save those comments for the general public comment period. And I want to remind everybody that the rules of how our meeting is conducted are established by Robert's Rules of Order. It's the widely recognized standards for parliamentary procedure. These rules, which include public comment, serve as an intake mechanism for feedback and not a Q&A. It's standard and has been for many years prior to this administration's governance. Simply put, it's nothing new. What is new is our attempt to respond to your comments and questions after the public comment portion is closed. So I also want to reiterate that decorum will be required and demanded at this meeting. Public outbursts from the audience, as we witnessed at the last meeting, will not be tolerated. Everyone deserves to be heard and respected, and we can and should do better. And it's Valentine's Day. Love should be in the air. We get a chuckle. We can all laugh together, right? So I do want to thank you all for being here, for your passionate points of view, and for your commitment to the civic process as we share the common goal of improving our hometown. So with that, we will move on to the agenda for this evening. Ms. Lashy, are there any advertised hearings?
Yes, Mayor, there's a hearing for ordinance number 2023-03, an ordinance adopting the Lord and Taylor train station redevelopment plan. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-03, please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Excuse me, I have a question. Will we be able to speak in both portions of the public?
Yes. So comments on this RDP related to just the RDP? We'll close that portion of the hearing and then public comment, and yes, you can come back and speak. One time per comment, not multiple times per comment period.
Good evening. William West, 663 Summit Avenue, Westfield, New Jersey. Thank you all for your service and your volunteerism. I know we don't always agree, but I certainly do appreciate your support of this town and dedication. Certainly. I spoke a lot before. I'm against the size and scope of this program. One Westfield Place, for many reasons that were outlined pretty much in the planning board meeting. The height and density of the structures, not consistent with the master plan reexamination report or the land use master plan. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about the traffic study and some inconsistencies with the master plan in that traffic study. The desire in the Unified Land Use and Circulation Plan includes recommendations to improve traffic flow and minimize congestion. The desire is to have a level D service or better. Today, we have, as a result of the investigation by the traffic study, the Kimberly Horn traffic analysis, we have 6 intersections that are level E and F, which is unacceptable. And with the proposed One Westfield Place development, level of service gets worse. We go to 12 intersections that are levels E and F, okay? Inconsistent with the master plan. Makes sense because we're adding 374 AM cars to the peak rush hour. This is all per the survey, or for the traffic study, and 492 PM cars to the highest peak rush hour. So together, we're talking about 1,000 daily cars when you include the entire rush hours. This is certainly not inconsistent with the master plan. I don't subscribe to the transit-oriented development that's called out in the master plan. The metric says that we reduce traffic based upon the location of our train station, and specifically with respect to the South Avenue commercial building. That states that 30% of the employees that go to that building will take mass transit. I just don't believe 30% of the people working there are going to take the Raritan Valley line to Westfield. I think you're going to have 95, 98% of the people driving to work. And I think I saw the estimate, there's like 1,300 employees going to this, 210 square foot building. They're just not going to take the train to Westfield on Raritan Valley. There were some improvements recommended in the traffic study, including a light at Clark Street and North Avenue. It's going to reduce the Clark Street wait, of course, because they're going to have a traffic light, but it's going to increase the delays at North Avenue. Other improvements intuitively won't work. Eliminating a lane in South Avenue, I mean, really, that is definitely going to back up traffic on Central Avenue and South Avenue and the Westfield Circle, which is really the biggest bottleneck, gridlock, if you will, in the entire town. Traffic flow will be negatively impacted on Central and South, and it'll cause cut-throughs on Washington, Westfield Avenue, Park Street, Boulevard, and Summit Avenue. We know that. I did see that they tried to reduce a lane on North Avenue between Elm and Central, but that didn't work because it would certainly back up on, the proposed parking deck in Elm Street. There were also omissions in the Kimberly Horn report that will negatively impact traffic. Namely, the Westfield Avenue and South Avenue intersection was not included in the study. I mean, that's a pretty significant intersection right there when you've got the Westfield Circle right there. 22 condos going up today. Everybody sees it on Central Avenue, right? Right across from the Amoco station. That is not in the traffic study, those 22 condos. The Vermella 300 apartments in Garwood, 296, okay, is omitted from the traffic study report. That is right on the border of Westfield. That's certainly going to have an impact, and it should have been included in the traffic study. A lot of the new developments in Westfield were, but my gosh, I think that's reaches the threshold of including it. In summary, there are 6 intersections right now deemed unacceptable by the master plan, levels E and F services. With the new development combined with Westfield 1, we're up to 12 intersections with a level of service of E and F. This is in conflict with the master plan goal to minimize traffic to a level D. Traffic and congestion impacts all residents' quality of life. I urge you to scale back this development, reduce its size and scope, and be consistent with our land use ordinances and the master plan recommendations. Thank you.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Ted Ritter, 710 North Avenue West, Ward 1. I'm going to start out on a super positive note. I am a supporter of strategic, context-sensitive redevelopment. I did visit the One Westfield Place Preview Center, and I read up on the development proposal, as you suggested, for both the Lord and Taylor properties and the other locations that are part of this redevelopment plan. I think some of what's been proposed makes good sense for the town, and some, in my opinion, clearly doesn't. I know you think that the majority of the town supports this, but I hear a lot at the Y, at the supermarket, emails I get from people that used to live here asking what's going on. A lot of serious concerns about basically the scope and the scale and the speed of this proposal as it stands now, not the concept of redevelopment. And I don't blame people at past meetings for being upset because this is something that's super important to the town. It's transformative, it's polarizing. Yet some reasonable steps that could have been taken, such as when Councilman LaGrippo couldn't even get a second on 2 separate and certainly reasonable motions to pause and just take a little bit more time to get some specifics addressed before it's too late.
Mr. Ritter, I'm sorry, are your comments specific to the RDP?
I have comments
Okay, that's what we're
specific to
waiting
the
for.
RDP.
And the other commentary can come later, the public comment, but this is specific to the RDP.
All right, well, as I told the folks at the Preview Center, one of the key issues is this actual size of the Lord and Taylor property. Now, it's big, and obviously something's got to be done there. I don't think anybody's disputing that. But I think the way it's, when you go to the Preview Center and you look at the model and you see the scale of it in the context of that neighborhood, it's just too large for that spot. One thing that would be helpful is to recognize when putting together plans for this site is to remember that there are houses nearby. A lot of the other towns that have redeveloped, they've concentrated most of their development in a downtown section where there really aren't neighborhoods right there. The Lord and Taylor on the west part of that property on the Lord and Taylor side of the street, the extreme western part, it goes right up to the property line or darn close to it. It'd be great to have a little bit of a buffer there so that the people that live in my neighborhood aren't looking out their window up at this urban monstrosity. So, you know, I think that if you want to get support, that you have to recognize that not every redevelopment component, not every plan needs to be supersized like this is. I think that the attractive townhouses that have been proposed on the Lord and Taylor properties where the employee parking lots were, on the other side of the street, over on the Y side of the street, I think those would make sense, but the problem is that if you look at them, the permitted height is like, I want to say it's like 75 feet. And if you look at all those nice houses on Charles Street and in the surrounding neighborhood on Clark there, they're not that big. So you need to make the townhouses look like they belong in that neighborhood as opposed to having something that looks like it belongs in Jersey City. And I think that would go a long way to scaling that back and making it look like there's a bit of a phase-in versus suddenly just giant buildings in what had been a neighborhood that is more residential. And as for the reimagined site at Lord and Taylor, it's not that I don't accept that something's got to be done there. And the same thing with South Avenue. There's a lot of property there. But I'm worried about all the traffic that's going to stream down Boulevard and Summit and Westfield. Clark Street, my wife and I have like IKEA-sized arguments about when we get stuck in traffic on Central Avenue now. I can just imagine what it's going to be like after this. And it would be just nice before you approved it to see a few more specifics on things that we don't know about and don't have specifics on, like that talked about a pedestrian bicycle path over the railroad tracks there. You know, that's not a done deal. That's going to take some doing to get done. We don't know where the north side fire station is going to go yet. A lot of the traffic details that I asked about at the preview center couldn't be answered because we're not at that stage yet. Well, addressing issues like these now, even if you say it's not time for that, and a willingness to compromise, besides just making some decisions that have been made to sort of reflect some public comment, I think would go a lot longer of a way to get some more support. So on this Valentine's Day, show some love. Pause the project, scale it back, and make it something for the town we love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Frank Fusaro, 422 Stanley Avenue. Before you vote on the redevelopment plan, I want to make sure that the entire council is familiar with what happened at the planning board meeting last week, since only Mayor Brindle and Councilman Dardia sit on that board. Residents pointed out almost 30 inconsistencies between the redevelopment plan and the master plan, which were ignored by the planning board and their expert. One of the inconsistencies was significantly reducing the amount of required parking at the South Avenue offices, well below the master plan recommendations. Instead of the master plan's recommended 630 spaces, the developer is only going to be required to provide 525 spaces, which not coincidentally is the exact size of the developer's proposed garage. Chris Colley from Topology tried to explain away this inconsistency by saying that the redevelopment agreement provides a minimum to maximum range of required parking, and the master plan recommendations fall within that range. This clever attempt by Topology to avoid inconsistencies with the master plan recommendations doesn't work because you already know that the developer can barely meet the minimum range, let alone the maximum range. And there's good reason that the master plan recommends at least 630 parking spaces for these size offices. There will be approximately 703 cars driving to the South Avenue offices daily, with only parking for 525 cars, leaving 205 cars with no place to park. Those numbers are based on the developer's own estimates of tenants and visitors. The redevelopment plan is also inconsistent with the master plan because it significantly reduces employee and commuter parking and does not add any shopper parking during weekday business hours. You don't have to be an expert to see that the redevelopment plan is inconsistent with the master plan. This council can't just blindly claim that you are relying on the planning board's resolution or the town's experts. If you vote to approve this redevelopment plan tonight, you're knowingly ignoring the legal requirement that the redevelopment plan be consistent with the master plan and the inconsistencies in the required parking. The town also can't justify voting tonight to rezone South Avenue offices under the redevelopment agreement. We've heard over and over again that the reason for the offices on South Avenue is to create foot traffic, quote, walking wallets. The town has no expert report or analysis that building offices will achieve that goal or qualifying how much those office workers will spend. StreetWorks has a report saying that each office worker is projected to spend $5,705 per year. This is completely unrealistic. How many office workers will just drive to work, eat lunch at their desk, or in a food service cafeteria that will no doubt be provided, and then go home? It is a gross dereliction of your obligations to residents to vote to approve a plan that rezones South Avenue for offices in hopes that tenants will produce foot traffic when you have no expert analysis or report to support that. This redevelopment plan represents the town handing its future over to a developer, whereas the future should be in the hands of the electorate. The redevelopment plan was easy to draft because it simply accommodated the plans of a developer who presumably is slated to be the designated redeveloper. You cannot designate a redeveloper until you adopt a redevelopment plan. So the process you have followed is the exact opposite of what it's supposed to be, in addition to it being a no-bid process for the sale of public land. Because of relaxed parking standards, when development is complete, the town will have more congestion, but likely the same difficulties in shoppers trying to find convenient parking. The town council is under a false impression that the redevelopment plan is substantially consistent with the township's master plan, as suggested by the planning board. But the June 2021 Unified Land Use and Circulation element of the master plan neglected to set a limit on redevelopment in downtown. It said that more intensity is recommended, but never indicated what the height or residential density limit should be. We think this is the fatal flaw in the master plan. The municipal land use law says that a land use plan element is required to show the proposed intensity of development. Saying simply that more intensive development is recommended without stating its limits is not valid, is not a valid land use plan. With the current wording of the 2021 master plan, presumably the town council would say that a redevelopment plan that allows 20-story buildings was also consistent because it is, quote, more intensive. A land use plan should set limits. The 2021 master plan dodges this
Sorry,
requirement. Thank you.
Allison Carey, excuse me, 408 East Dudley Avenue. Further to what Mr. Fazaro said, I want to go back to the planning board for a minute. Our group spent a significant amount of time, ourselves with subject matter experts, many of which you know, going through the redevelopment plan, the master plan, and the unified land use circulation element to make sure there were no inconsistencies. As Frank said, we found at least 30. We documented them. We sent them to the planning board. Sent everyone a copy of it. Went to the planning board meeting, and no one had anything to say about it. And frankly, the lack of intellectual and professional curiosity from that board was disappointing and really surprising. You know, you can think the plan's great, but the job here is to make sure it's consistent with the master plan. So we all know they unanimously voted in favor. So we're back here. And as Frank said, you know, only 2 of you are at the planning board meeting. We sent this to all of you last night. Not a lot of time, but we didn't have a lot of time to look at it either. And we're back here voting on consistency with the master plan. Not whether you like it, not your opinion, consistency with the master plan. So I'm gonna take a step back and kind of about the nature of the master plan and the findings that we had. So the Westfield Advocates for Responsible Development reviewed the proposed Lord and Taylor train station redevelopment plan to determine if it is substantially consistent with the master plan and the unified land use circulation element. Based on the foregoing substantial inconsistencies, the Westfield Advocates for Responsible Development maintains that the planning board could not determine the redevelopment plan is substantially consistent with the master plan, which they did anyway. So in addition to substantial inconsistencies set forth, the overall redevelopment plan is substantially inconsistent with the values and the goals of the master plan. The redevelopment plan ignores the following master plan guiding principles within the ULUC. So a few of them are, these are quotes from the master plan. As we grow, we will strive to preserve the attributes of our unique hometown character and community identity, the beauty of our natural environment, and the strengths of our neighborhoods while lessening adverse effects of growth. 2, we will retain the best qualities of small town and respect its heritage. 3, we value open space and parks as an integral part of the community's hometown feel and will take advantage of opportunities for its enhancement and expansion. Number 4, we will maintain and enhance the historic and human orientation of our downtown as the center of our community. Number 8, we realize that architectural and land use design is fundamental to our identity. Number 9, we will preserve our single-family neighborhoods while providing housing choices that will allow people to age in place. The redevelopment plan is also inconsistent with the overall goals and objectives within the ULUC in the following areas. To provide adequate light and air, open space by establishing, administering, and enforcing bulk, density, and design standards that are appropriate for various zones and uses in the community. Number 2, to preserve and protect the suburban character of existing residential neighborhoods through a zone designations that based on existing neighborhood patterns and according to the environmental requirements for the respective residential uses. bulk density, and design standards that are appropriate for various dwelling types and not overly intensive in relation to the lots on which dwelling is situated in their respective zones. Discouraging through traffic in residential areas wherever possible. Regulations to preserve and enhance visual appearance of residential neighborhoods. Appropriate regulations to protect and/or replace trees, woodland impacted by development projects. To maintain and enhance the viability of various business districts by encouraging an appropriate mix of land uses that will complement one another and meet the retail and service needs of the town. Promoting a desirable visual environment and preserving small town atmosphere in our business districts. Providing or requiring the provision of sufficient numbers of parking and loading spaces in appropriate locations to serve the needs of the general public.
Ms. Kerr, I'm sorry, you're out of time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Edgar Charles, 610 Prospect Street. I'm going to pick off from where Allison left off and elucidate numerous inconsistencies between the redevelopment plan and the ULUC. I'm going to start on Chapter 3, the development program. Section 3.2, Lord and Taylor Properties, the GB2 zone. 3.2A1, West Zone West Building. The redevelopment plan proposes a fundamental change in use from business retail to residential business, which is substantially inconsistent with the ULUC. The bulk height is very tall, with excessive density and total floor area of 170,000 square feet. The buildings are 6 stories and 75 feet tall, with a 70% building coverage. There are setbacks from the 4th through the 6th floor that do not provide light to the sidewalk. The building footprints are not defined, and the amount of amenity space is not defined. Inconsistencies are as follows. The redevelopment plan includes residential use in the redevelopment zone, and this is in direct conflict with ULUC page 41, where it states that the GB2 zone prohibits residential use of any kind. The plan is also inconsistent with the land use ordinance, 11.27 for GB2, prohibiting residential uses. The side yard setback is too close to the single-family residential homes in North Avenue. This creates a 70-foot tall wall, approximately 100 feet long, and eliminates any privacy for the residents of the single-family house. This is inconsistent with the guiding principles of the ULUC regarding preserving residential neighborhoods. The plan is also inconsistent with the December 2019 Master Plan Reexamination Report, pages 82 and 83, as follows. Quote, prohibited uses in the GB2 zone. In the GB2 zone, residential use of any type should not be permitted. The same uses prohibited in the CBD and GB1 zone districts should be prohibited in the GB2 zone. The existing regulations found at section 11.27, subsection D4, do not permit residential uses. This objective of the 2002 master plan is resolved, end quote. The buildings are overly intensive in relation to the lots on which a dwelling is situated in their respective zones. Since this use is prohibited, GB2 residential density is not defined. The maximum allowable in the GB2 AHO Affordable Housing Overlay District, the LNT, by the way, is not part of this district, is 25 dwelling units per acre. With a total available lot area of approximately 194,372 square feet, 4.4 acres, excluding remaining Lord and Taylor building at 138 units. This is 6 dwellings per acre higher than that requirement, or a 20% increase in current standards for that GB2 AHO zone. Redevelopment plan page 21 includes coverage by buildings on above ground structures shall not exceed 70% of total coverage. That's land use ordinance 11.27 for GB2. It only allows for 40%. This is substantially inconsistent with the ULUC to ensure consistency with goal number 2, bulk, density, and design standards that are appropriate for various dwelling types and not overly intensive in relation to the lots on which a dwelling is situated in the respective zones. A comparison of existing GB2 zoning requirements to the proposed rezoning under the redevelopment plan is attached, and we submitted that. Redevelopment plan, page 21, the proposed height of the west building is significantly inconsistent with ULUC by exceeding the proposed change to maximum height of 55 feet contained in the ULUC, page 27, by 36% to 75 feet, 87% higher than the current land use ordinance of 40 feet. This is substantially inconsistent with any other zoning. The maximum GFA for residential consisting of 170,000 square feet is excessive and should be brought in line with the 1624 dwelling units per acre. Redevelopment plan doubles the height, increases the allotment coverage, and permits residential usage not currently contemplated in the ULUC. Section 3.2A2, West Zone Center Building. The bulk height is very tall with excessive density and a total floor area of 150,000 square feet. The buildings are 4 stories and 70 feet tall with a 70% density. Redevelopment plan, page 24, the proposed height of the central building is significantly inconsistent with the ULUC.
I'm sorry,
by
Mr. Charles,
exceeding the
you're out
proposed
of
change.
time. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Dave Ecca, 222 Midwood Place. I really wish I'd known there was a zoning specific comment thread because I would have really taken the opportunity to let my freak flag fly. On that particular topic, zoning is really interesting. I could tell a really long story here. But I got a pop quiz. What city is more dense, San Diego or Westfield? What about Austin, Texas? Atlanta, Houston, Phoenix, Dallas, Denver, Tampa? I think you know, but you can Google it if you don't believe me. How long have we been this dense? We have slightly less people today than we did in 1960. 1960! We've always been this dense for pretty much everyone's entire adult life here, and much longer than mine. Now, I came here tonight largely to avoid prefix menus, but also to try and figure out something that has been bothering me. Here, we have a town council that is reducing bureaucratic overhead, working with a private enterprise to boost local investment on a plan that is broadly popular with local business, and it is wildly unpopular with the town's Republican caucus and some small C conservatives from either party around town. Part of the reason that Westfield's capital improvement stagnated is because of overly restrictive zoning. I understand the urge for restrictive zoning. Westfield's nice. We want to keep it that way. So you put guardrails up to make sure we can protect the town from ourselves. But I think this is government overreach. You're telling us what we can and can't do with our property, setting strict guidelines for businesses, and it stops us as a region from solving some very real problems, like effectively forcing a large portion of our neighbors out of town when they retire, and pricing out young families who might not have the same access to capital as those around this room do today. We have a local government body here that is breaking down the barriers to let the free market breathe a little bit in downtown Westfield. We're taking land that is currently highly restricted in use, and we're zoning it in a way that allows it to be developed with diversity and mixed-use space. All other things equal, a square that can only hold cars is less valuable than the same square that can hold cars, restaurants, businesses, entertainment venues, and so forth. It is necessarily so because the value of parking is included in the existing square and the proposed change. By removing these barriers, we are increasing the value of our land and all the land surrounding it, yours and mine. Now, there will be more NIMBY bingo later, not this development, neighborhood character, more time, but I don't see any of these concerns as truly addressing the zoning or the development. What changes are they proposing to the project that would lead to greater value creation for the town, for all of us? If it doesn't create more value for all of us, and instead blunts that value by protecting the status quo or prioritizing strict land use ordinance, well then you'll still have to hear me talk at these meetings. If it doesn't create value for all Westfielders, not just colonial Westfield or small town Westfield or whatever restrictive slice of Westfield you prefer, I'm against it. And I want to make sure I'm getting this right. But thank you to the Democrats who are reducing the role of government in our lives by loosening up restrictive zoning to allow corporate development downtown. Twilight Zone stuff, guys. Thank you.
Didn't expect to make it so soon. Thank you. Rob Galgano, 939 Boulevard. Good evening. Without reservation, I am in favor of this redevelopment plan as is. Regarding community input, no one can deny there was a tremendous amount of civic engagement and openness. The information is out there, easily accessible. However, there is no denying that there has been some opposition to this plan. I found the opposition's approach, personally, to be disordered and frenetic.
Mr. Galgano, just make sure your comments are specific to the redevelopment plan and not the process.
Oh.
Process can come at general comment after the hearing on the ordinance.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, can I try this? All right, I'll say this. Additionally, I'm going to note that in light of a recent poll conducted by Tappan to Westfield, the opposition could not muster more than 849 theoretically valid no votes in a community of 30,000.
Mr. Galgano, you can come back at public comment.
Oh, is this
and-
public comment
No,
time?
this is just for the hearing of the redevelopment plan.
Oh, I'm
But there's a
sorry.
separate public comment that comes after this.
I'm so
Sorry,
sorry.
you might have come in late.
Oh, that's
That's okay.
I came in late
But
and I
you can come
apologize.
back after
Sorry,
we close
everybody.
this hearing out, no problem.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. No worries. It is confusing, so.
Good evening. My name is Bob McNamara. I live at 603 Lawrence Avenue, and I've lived in Westfield for 32 years. I've spoken to the town council and the planning board. So I wanted just to quickly talk about two items. The first is solar studies. I had asked if anybody had done solar studies of the Lord and Taylor site. I didn't hear that anybody actually did, so I went and did it myself. And basically, what I wanted to say was that for most of the year, in the afternoon, the east building at Lord and Taylor is going to cast a shadow over our monuments, our memorials in Memorial Park. And I think that that's really disappointing. And this goes to the height of the east building being 6 stories, so close to Memorial Park. It's really a shame that we're not looking at this, pushing it back away from the memorials. And as I said, it's most of the afternoon that they're in shadow, even to the extent that it's going across North Avenue significantly. And I think that we need to really address the height, at least of the east building. The other thing I wanted to talk about were the parking garages. And as I mentioned previously, THA is your engineering consultant. On their own website, they recommend a minimum length for a parking garage of 238 feet. For improved efficiency, they suggest 278 feet. The present proposed south parking garage has a depth of only 170 feet. So we are 68 feet less than the minimally efficient footprint. The north structured parking garage is even worse. Its depth at its longest is 213 feet, but it narrows down to 156 feet where it abuts against the residential portion of that site. So it's 82 feet less than an efficient garage proposed. There is also the issue of how you access the residential section. You go through our parking garage to service that building. It's really poorly planned. As we know in construction, less efficiency translates into more construction dollars. In essence, the developer has forced us to accept 2 insufficient sites for these garages. They are simply too small. Also, relative to the footprint size, the master plan reexamination report addresses a vision for parking garages within the town. This is on pages 113 and 114. And it's actually very well written and a nice vision for our town. It talks about thinking about their uses in decades in the future, talking about putting ramps on the outside of the parking garage, having flat floors for the real parking garage so that you can convert it to a residential, an office use, whatever, in the future. Talking always about being able to think in the future. As I stated, the proposed footprints are very small. It won't have an outer ramp. The report states also, standalone structures take away from the design fabric of the street. And I'm quoting from the reexamination report. The south parking garage is in fact a standalone parking garage. The report also talks about garages being wrapped by other uses. Again, this objective is ignored in the plan that the developer is forcing us to accept. It won't meet the objectives of the reexamination report. The report basically says Westfield does not want to build these structures, only to have them sit there as monuments to the past. That's a great objective, but we fail with this redevelopment to meet that objective. Thank you.
Jim Boys, 122 Ferris Place. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. While I do not expect there to be much suspense in tonight's vote, I do feel it's important to offer my comments for the record. The primary issue before this Town Council is consistency of the Streetworks redevelopment plan with the town master plan. For without consistency with the master plan, as the town planner has informed us, no development plan should move forward. So this is an essential question and one that must be answered carefully and confidently. Mayor and council have repeatedly told us that they will use the master plan reexamination report as their guidebook. And on the surface, that makes sense. However, I contend that any fair reading of that document does not lead to a project of the size and scale that is being voted on tonight. While there was a recommendation to increase building heights in the central business district from 40 to 55 feet, one which I support, nowhere in that document will you find any reference to building heights of 75 feet. And in fact, even higher with the addition of rooftop mechanical equipment. Moreover, residents expressed a clear preference away from 5- and 6-story structures. Tonight's proposal is, by and large, comprised of 5- and 6-story structures. These buildings are excessive, unnecessary, and inconsistent with the desires of the master plan respondents. And by the way, many of these are the same respondents who signed both petitions against the two recent developments. Many have expressed to me that they feel they were duped and never expected their sentiments to be manipulated and ultimately used against them. Now, I was once a proponent of the local redevelopment and housing law, but I must confess I am much less so today. I'm seeing how the process can be twisted and contorted to greenlight any size development, even the Sears Tower, as my neighbor likes to say. One reference to, quote, open to the possibility of building higher, end quote, and it's off to the races with no boundaries in place. Having recently viewed examples of 5-story development in a suburban town of mainly 3-story structures, all I can say is it makes for a shocking contrast. The feeling is less wow and more whoever thought that was a good idea. It draws away from the contextual feel of a properly planned, holistic town. I can only imagine the reaction to seeing a 6-story building next to a residential home. I don't think Westfield is recalling for this type of development in the master plan. And for this reason, I ask you to slow down and rethink the proposal before moving ahead. Thank you very much.
My name is Susan Goodman. I live at 322 Arenda Circle. I've been walking the town. I go out 3-4 times a week, 2 to 3 hours a time, 30 to 40 houses each, different parts of the town. I get probably 20 to 25 people to answer their door. As far as you want structure and technical things, I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want 5- and 6-story buildings at the Lord and Taylor or anywhere on the property on the north and side of the railroad station. They're worried, especially the people on North Avenue, that they cannot pull out of their driveways because the traffic is going to be too busy. They don't think that the town square will be sufficient, especially if it's going to be an in and out to get to the north side of the train station, and possibly for that parking lot on the north and central area, because you may not be able to have any other entrance in and out to get to that large parking lot. They feel they don't want to give up their surface parking spaces for 2 large garages. Those people on North Avenue, Boulevard, Summit, Westfield, Charles Street, they don't want to be looking at those buildings. They don't want to look out their back windows and see the back of that building that's going in the parking lot across from the main Lord and Taylor building. They want to be able to have their children be able to safely ride their bikes around town and to and from their friend's house without worrying about the traffic flow. They don't believe you're going to get a walkway over Route 28 by where the 9/11 memorial is, because it probably will not get passed by the Department of Transportation. And these are people that just know that it's a ridiculous idea. They want the stores downtown to be filled. They don't want extra retail. They don't want extra commercial space.
Ms. Goodman, are you?
I know the technical. You want the technical.
Well, this is a
I'm
hearing
telling you
on-
the technical. They don't want this. So you go with me, Mayor Brindle. You go with me, council people, door to door like I do. And you listen to what they have to say. Today, I went to 25 houses on Edgewood. 20 answered their door. Every single one says this project scares the hell out of them. And they want it paused, and they want it rethought. So if you want to really hear what your residents want, and 4 to 7 years from now, you don't want people to be scared what's happening to their town, or say, why in the hell did this
Ms.
happen?
Goodman,
I didn't sign up for
I'm
this.
sorry, it really needs to be specific to the,
Okay.
you can come back later,
I will.
but
You
not
mark
for
my
this.
word.
I'm sure, thank you.
Sam Altman, Westfield. Sam Altman. I'm a 11th grader at Westfield High School. I live at 15 South Wickham Drive, and as the previous speaker done, walking around 30, 40 houses in Westfield a day. Me and a couple of my colleagues have also spoken to 50 or 70 students for the past per day for the past weeks, and I'll tell you what they want too. These students want a downtown that they can go shop in for a whole day instead of just go get a bite for lunch or something like that. These students want a downtown that can offer them stuff like men's clothes that they have to go all the way to Menlo Park for. These students want a place where they could hang out with their friends instead of just sitting at home the whole day. So that's what these students want. Now to go to the redevelopment part, as a couple of the previous speakers have said, redevelopment allows for this density, allows for these commercial stores to come in, allows for these stores that offer the students what they want, that offers generally people what they want. So this redevelopment increases the value and really takes advantage of the space that we have in Westfield, really takes advantage to complement for all things, to complement for stores, to complement for offices, to complement for even parking. Now, I've heard a lot of things about the inconsistencies with the master plan, but downtown is a part of our identity. Redevelopment sure isn't part of our identity, but our downtown is. These buildings in our downtown are central and important for Westfield's culture and identity. So letting this downtown die by keeping these building restrictions with redevelopment is actually going to do more harm for our identity than good by opening it up, allowing these buildings to build, allowing more stores in, allowing for reinvestment, and this reinvestment, this new goods, these stores that could provide more goods, these stores that could provide a longer day for people to shop at, would allow students to pour in to these stores and really revitalize this downtown. So thank you, and I urge the town council to go forward and start with this redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Brindle and the Town Council. Ravi Motwani, 772 Prospect Street. I'm going to keep it short since everything that can be said about this project has been said, and there'll be more to be said. I support this transit-oriented development that'll maximize the amount of residential, business, and leisure space within walking distance of public transport. And so I ask that you all vote yes to move this project forward. Thank you.
Good evening, Tony Laporta, 409 North Chestnut Street. I've got a lot of concerns about this redevelopment. Number one, I was at the planning board meeting, and the planning board was given a 38-page document, a masterful document, taking apart the redevelopment plan brick by brick, because it doesn't mesh with the master plan. I sat on the planning board for 6 years, appointed by former Mayor Tom Jardine. And I'm familiar with the planning board, what the purpose of it is, and how it acts. Not one serious question was asked of the speakers. 2 speakers spoke. Not one serious question was asked of the speakers of this 38-page masterful document. Not one. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It basically was the definition of a rubber stamp. And then I spoke to the mayor and Councilman Dardia, and I said they didn't belong on this hearing. Conflict of interest. Why? It's the mayor's plan. She sat here in secret for 4 years, and with developers.
Mr. Laporta, are you going to comment on the?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Okay.
I will.
Thank
Just
you.
indulge me for
And you
a
could
minute.
come back, we'll indulge you in the public comment portion.
I am going to speak.
So if you could speak to the ordinance, that would be
Okay.
great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So let's look at some of the things that I'm against. 1, parking lot. Of course, builders, developers don't like open parking lots. Why? Because there's nothing built there. There's no income for them. There's nothing for them to do. And I've heard these developers talk at length of the unusefulness of a parking lot. Well, I was a commuter for 37 years, I think 30 years out of Westfield. Parking lot is good. You park your car and you go. You get off the train and you come back. So you want to sell the parking lot for $10.4 million. Am I correct with that, Mayor? Is that the right number? $10.4 million? Something like that, okay. And what are you going to do? You're going to replace it for close to $30 million with 2 useless parking decks. One we heard is undersized, and is definitely undersized, and the other was rejected in 1999. Your own report that the town paid for, the Rich Report, it threw out that location on North and Central. And this is what you want to give us? There's a utilization for that parking lot to park cars for commuters. You're going to sell something for $10.4 million and replace it with a worse product for over 30 million. And you know there's gonna be maintenance, and you know the DPW will be in there cleaning it out, and you know the police will be in there, and it's unsafe. You wanna get off a train, 12 o'clock at midnight, 11:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, I did it very often, working, having meetings, entertaining in New York. You really wanna get off a train and get into a parking garage? You want your wife, your children? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. So it's replacement cost. It makes no sense. At the very minimum, that lot should be sold for $30 million. The replacement cost to replace it for the utilization it uses. Let's talk about the exit. I believe Councilman LaGrippo asked the planner, asked the developers, well, what if the exit on that north side parking lot is not approved by the county? What's your plan? They have no plan because there's no good answer. You're not going to put it on North Avenue, and you're not going to go the other way because there's not enough space. That's going to be going in. It's bad. I truly believe, Mayor, that the little rascals and the Marx Brothers, on their worst day, could come up with a better plan than you have here. I'll be back, Mayor. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, sorry about that.
Good evening. First of all, Raphael Betancourt, 233 Gulf Edge, 38-year resident of the town. I want to commend Mayor and Council for coming forward with a project that is going to make Westfield a better community. I'm just not sure that the project as proposed is what's best for this community. The density is really going to clog this community, as Cranford is clogged, as Scotch Plains is clogged, as many of our neighboring communities are clogged. The community is asking for a pause. You've done a great job so far. All you have to do, if you're so sure this is going to come forward and succeed, and it's going to be your will. You are the elected officials. You have the right to make this decision. If you're so certain that this decision is a done deal, why not give the community a pause? Give us 60, 90, 120 days. I'm not walking around the town, but I've certainly talked to people often. People are confused, they're uninformed. And having a place downtown was a great idea, but how many of us go downtown? Not many. Westfield downtown is a place where we go eat, but there's really not much more to do there. So give us a pause. Give us time to think this through. You might get the community to support this project. You don't know at this juncture if the community is accepting this project. And as an elected official, I would want to know that the community that I represent is approving a project that I am proposing. Thank you.
Dan Ortolani, 727 Glen Avenue here in Westfield. Good evening, Town Council, Mayor Brindle, citizens. I just wanted to offer some brief comments in support of the redevelopment project, specifically the aspect of the plan that would create new office space. I recently attended a session at the Preview Center recently, and the detail and context that Mayor Brindle provided regarding the new proposed office buildings was particularly helpful to me in understanding the scope and financial benefits of this aspect of the project. Creating a more diversified tax base is essential to easing or at least containing the long-term burden on the town's residents. Also, the emphasis on connecting the new offices to downtown is critical for both our local businesses and the future corporate tenants, who I understand will need to be secured prior to the start of construction. You know, I have some direct experience with this recently. I was asked by my company to assess office space in the New Jersey area here for about 125 tech workers. And we assessed some space down in the Metro Park area, right, which is thought to be a premier, office corporate center. The buildings were beautiful. They had gyms, cafeterias. I think the gentleman who was here earlier mentioned that the workers want to just drive in and eat at their desk every day. Beautiful buildings. However, they were all empty. The parking lots were desolate. The buildings were hollowed out. They're disconnected from any community. I don't think those office parks are ever coming back. As the return to office trend for corporations gains momentum, companies will be searching for office space with access to transportation, modern amenities, and connection to the local community, where team members can live, work, and spend at our local businesses. I think there's a major opportunity in front of us. I think the proposal has the potential to establish the town as a leader in attracting new companies to the area and driving the associated benefits to our tax base and businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, hello, Carla Bonacci, 603 Lawrence Avenue, resident 32 years. I just want to bring us back up for a moment to the master plan and the impetus for doing this redevelopment plan that you've spent so much time doing. So here's a description that I hope I can read. Westfield is a thriving community with a strong school system, numerous parks and recreational areas, and a variety of shopping and dining options. The downtown area is particularly popular with its mix of independent shops, restaurants, and cafes. Westfield is also known for its well-preserved historic architecture, with many homes and buildings dating back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In addition to its charming downtown, Westfield is also known for its excellent schools and quality of life. Overall, Westfield is a charming, affluent, suburban town that's known for its beautiful homes, excellent schools, and vibrant downtown. And I don't think anyone here would disagree with that description. The source is fairly young. It condenses the wisdom of innumerable data points on the internet. And yes, I asked the chat GPT AI about Westfield's reputation, and that's what came up. So I think we're in good hands. I believe the concern is that all of Westfield's virtues are being put at risk by grafting a massive rezoning and redevelopment plan in the center of town. I know we all have serious concerns about the downtown retail vacancy rate and the desire to keep the town growing and adapting. And we would like to allow for transit-oriented development. The problem with this plan is that the Lord & Taylor site is not compatible with Westfield's strong neighborhood character, as evidenced by everybody talking about 6-story buildings in a 3-story town. We have wondered if there's some major crisis that we don't know about, some legal mandate or fiscal cliff we're unaware of, that's driving a rezoning program of this magnitude at warp speed, that's making you think that our town is dying and saying it on national news. That's a lovely way to help our reputation. We are an affluent town. We have a solid residential tax base. We are not at risk of a doom loop scenario. So we can only surmise it's an opportunity to sell off development rights, to build out some modest public space and traffic improvements. And I've said before, on the 5.61 acre site, You are basically giving him another 5.61 acre site by allowing him 3 stories of air rights, and you are not getting enough money for that. You are not, so you need to look at that. And I wish you would just make it 3 stories, and we would probably all go away, and you would be happy about that. I also want to say we've already demonstrated how this plan is inconsistent with the master plan's vision statements. We have asked for a pause to develop an alternative plans and their potential impacts. We do believe topology has the burden of proof, and they could do a better job with their rezoning and redevelopment planning, and not every vacant parking lot is a vacant lot that's not making money. Ours actually serve a purpose. I think this is an inflection point. Whether Westfield in 20 or 30 years should still resemble what it has been for the past 70 years, building upon and maintaining its current character, its reputation, its best qualities, or go down the path of creating 2 distinct environments, a self-contained inner town core with urban scale density, embedded with an outer town that perhaps holds on to its classic suburban residential experience. We don't want such a tale of 2 towns. We are not a city. We are not Denver, and we are not Austin. We are Westfield, 30,000 people, 22,000 adults, a lot of children that currently don't have anything to do downtown, and I don't think they're going to be hanging out on a 5.61 acre site for 55 and olders. So our strength is beautiful homes, strong schools, numerous open spaces, and a vibrant downtown. I believe we should evolve by building on our core strengths, our values, our reputation. You have a very high-risk project. You are going to change the nature of this town. It's obvious that's what you want to do, but as Susan said, we have canvassed.
I'm sorry, you're out of time, Ms.
I know.
Bonacci.
We have
Okay,
canvassed
thank
so
you.
many people.
Right.
We wish you had also. We really do.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Ben Liu. I live in the Common Place for almost 30 years. I love this town. I retired. And at first I said, my wife said we should move to south because it's too cold. I said, no, Westfield is a perfect place. I want to spend the rest of my life here because this is a very unique, quiet, beautiful town. Just like we have the, downtown, we can see the top 10 town in the United States because we have a uniqueness, right? The style, so beautiful. So I said, no, I'm not going to move. I like to stay here. But when I saw the plan just a couple of days ago, I saw, wow, if this plan really move on to that direction, then my view of the Westfield will be completely different. First, I totally agree and support. We do need development. We do need change. That's a great idea because downtown, horrible, and a lot of Taylor horrible. We don't want the grass growing. And so I totally support, town's plan to change this town. My only point is very simple. We should try to keep the style as much as we can. We should not do something like, 4 storage and 5, 6, because average on the downtown, we can see about, 3, something like that. I think we should keep the consistency, the style of this town. And instead of change, it become another Hoboken. And then this town is meaningless to me, valueless to me. I definitely will move out. Not only me, I believe many people, they love this town, they will move out. And this will hurt a lot of residents and the value of the property here. So I just want to make sure, that's my personal opinion. We want uniqueness, we want consistency, we want beauty, we love this town, and also I want to live in this town for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, here, oops, sorry.
Yes, my name's Arlene Gardner. I'm at 634 Carlton Road, and I have been communicating with some of you. I have been at the Design Center twice. One Westfield Place redevelopment, as proposed, has much to recommend. Nobody wants the Lord and Taylor building to remain empty. That was the starting point. I think we all agree on that. And it does make sense to look at development holistically. I have to agree that the proposal is too big and particularly too high. I kind of see the other side, which is this, probably it's the only way it works financially. I think we're looking for a balance. I think if you built less, the town would get less money, and maybe we should think about that. I'm still not convinced that we need more age-restricted rental units as opposed to condos, and I don't think we need a big office building altogether. However, if the redevelopment agreement has flexibility for the nature of what's going to be built at Lord and Taylor's, if it can be built to be either condos, if that's what's necessary, because that's what everybody keeps telling me, that would be useful. If, as I've been told, the agreement should not allow the developer to even purchase the South Avenue parking lot property, let alone develop it, until Lord and Taylor area has been developed, until the north side parking lot has been developed, and most importantly, until they actually have tenants for that building. Nobody wants another empty building. We who live here don't want it, you don't want it. I don't think, HBC doesn't want it, okay? So with those requirements, if they're in the redevelopment agreement, I think it provides a certain amount of protection for everybody. So when I heard about that, I felt a little bit better. Thank you, Linda. My remaining concern is the traffic safety at the corner of South and Central. I can appreciate the interest in having on-street parking for short-term shoppers if we no longer have the South Street surface parking. But the idea of taking away the third lane just sounds like an invitation for a traffic problem. I remember when we didn't have that third lane, and it was worse. So I don't know why we would consider that. I suggest to you that maybe the town can keep the surface parking that's basically behind Westfield Seafood. It kind of goes off to the side. I don't know if that was part of what was being sold or not. I don't recall at the moment, but it's not part of a square. It goes behind the building. Maybe that could be saved for short-term parking for shoppers, and that would solve that problem. You wouldn't have on-street parking, which is not as safe anyway. You wouldn't have to get rid of a lane. Let's not make the traffic worse. My last thought is, and I don't know that this is, but it perhaps should be part of the whole picture. At the corner of South and Central lies abandoned Jiffy Lube. It's been unused for at least a decade, if not more. It is truly an eyesore. I think it actually meets the definition of blight. I would urge the town council to do something about that. If anything needs redevelopment, it's that building. So those are my 4 points. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so so I close this hearing. This hearing is closed. Councilman Contract, please move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-03.
I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-03 on second reading, an ordinance adopting the Lord and Taylor Train Station redevelopment plan.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Dardia. Any discussion?
I guess I can start off because I missed the last meeting. First of all, obviously, we all appreciate every resident who's come to talk about this plan, both tonight as well as offline at the preview center and elsewhere. It's really important to learn the details. It takes time, but when you're looking at a complex proposal like this, it's really important to understand the details to make an informed judgment. I know my goal as the Ward 3 councilman has to help my constituents understand the details, understand that there are trade-offs involved in this project because it is so complex, but you have to look at it holistically and you have to balance the pros and the cons. So that's what I've encouraged all of the Ward 3 residents to do, and I'm happy to say that many have. Regarding my vote tonight, to me, the most important thing is I need to represent Ward 3. And on that front, it's pretty split. There's a lot of support and there's a lot of opposition. At these meetings, it seems like it's all opposition and not support, but I can assure you that's not the case. That's just based off countless emails and phone calls, impromptu meetings at the preview center and elsewhere. So given that Ward 3 is split, I can't split my vote. I have to pick. So here's how I'm doing it, and I'm following the same advice I've given to every Ward 3 resident who's asked me, and frankly, those who haven't asked. And Arlene, who just spoke, will know what I'm talking about, because I've explained this to her and others. Step one, does this project address our critical town goals? Step two, what are the pros and cons? And do the pros outweigh the cons? I said it's a trade-off because there's no perfect project. And then step three, and then the mayor talked about this earlier, are the cons sufficiently mitigated to ensure the project delivers more benefit than not? Let me take you through how I answer those questions. Step one, does the project address critical town goals? I think, to me, the clear answer is yes. One of our town's top priorities since 1999, and something I campaigned on in 2017 and last year, is fixing our downtown vacancy issue. It was one of the top issues raised in the master plan, and the root cause of the issue has never been solved in this town. Other towns have solved it, and we've chosen to ignore it. That's the lack of foot traffic Monday to Friday. Our businesses are suffering because there's not enough demand Monday to Friday. Why? There are lots of reasons, but one of the chief ones is we've lost 2,000 jobs in this town or more, and that fuels the downtown demand. Anybody who's worked in a downtown knows what the walking wallets are, and I've worked in Summit, I've worked in New York City. You all go out and eat, and you do your shopping, you get your haircut. Well, I don't, but you get your haircut, right? You take advantage of the services where you work because that's where you are during the week. So to me, it's obvious that when you replace the office workers, you fuel the demand. I don't need a study to tell me this. I know this from my own common sense, and I know this from my own history and personal experience. Other towns near us, just look at Cranford, go to Princeton, look at Metuchen, look at Summit up north. They've done this. Nobody's complaining about their downtowns. We haven't, and we are complaining. So I do think this plan absolutely addresses one of our core issues. And we have a chance to not only catch up, but exceed those other towns that I just mentioned. It does deliver on other key town goals. I'm not going to go into as much detail. We have issues with parking. I think this plan does address them. It diversifies our tax base. You know that residents bear the vast majority of the burden, 92%, highest in Union County, where this plan invests heavily in public improvements and traffic infrastructure, which we desperately need. I've sat on the finance committee for 5 years, and we can't afford them unless you want your taxes to go up higher than they've gone up, and nobody does. And it adds more diverse housing options. So that was step one. Sorry, it's a little long-winded, but I want you to understand my logic. Step two, what are the pros and cons? I've said all along there's no such thing as a perfect project, so we've got to understand if the pros outweigh the cons. I think they do. The pros I already talked about it. Fuels demand downtown, desperately needed. Improves parking with the garages, incremental capacity on nights and weekends when it's most needed in the office buildings. Significantly increases public improvements. You know this project funds $54 million of public improvements through the projected pilot revenues. We talked about the parking garages, 2 new public spaces, 1 on each side of the town, major circulation and safety improvements at 10 intersections and more. And it strengthens and diversifies our revenue sources, which we really need, right? We need it to fund what this town needs. So the pilot delivers an estimated $214 million of incremental revenue to the town over 30 years. $70 million is allocated to the public improvements, including debt service, leaving $140 million left over to fund other needs, like stabilizing taxes, funding the firehouse that somebody mentioned, funding Board of Education capital projects, and other such things. To me, there are cons, and I've said it from the dais, and I've said it to many of you. I'm not ignorant. I agree there will be more traffic. The question you have to ask yourself is, or not really the question, but I believe that we're gonna have more traffic if we want to address the downtown economic vitality issues. We need more people working in our downtown. They have to get here. It will mean more traffic. You can't fix that issue without more cars, unfortunately. They're just opposite ends, of the same, yardstick. The question therefore is it mitigated? And I'll talk about that. To me, another con that's been expressed, and it's been expressed tonight, actually, a few people have talked about the South Side office buildings, but I've heard a lot about the mass and scale of the South Side office buildings. And I'll talk about why I think that's mitigated. So step 2, to me, the pros outweigh the cons. So lastly, are the cons mitigated? And I really do think they are. You may not agree, but I do think they are. On the traffic front, if you read the traffic studies and you listen to the experts, and we have one here tonight, the mitigation is designed to make circulation and flow improve. It doesn't prevent cars from coming to town because we need the cars. So we gotta make sure that things can move through the town better and more safely, and I think they do. Read the reports. The average increase is in single digits, and I think that's mitigating. You're not gonna eliminate it, you have to mitigate it. I also think it's important to step out of our own shoes a second and think about Streetworks. They're trying to lease office buildings and rent, townhomes and apartments. If this town turns into one giant traffic jam, do you think they're gonna be successful? No. So let's just think about why their interests are aligned to ours, right? We all want traffic to flow smoothly in this town, and I do think the mitigation plans will encourage that. In terms of the traffic mitigation process, I do want Ward 3 residents to know, and frankly the rest of the town, that process is not over. Since the last council meeting, which was about a month ago, because I missed the last one, I was traveling for work, the first thing I did was talk to Liz Jeffries, who's sitting in the audience, and the mayor, and said, hey, we need to address Central Avenue. We need to address Boulevard and Summit and the concern about cut-through. So it's taken me a while working behind the scenes, but I'm happy to announce that we are gonna look at that. So our experts, Streetworks experts, will assess Central, Boulevard, Summit. We will assess the impact of this project, and they will determine, are there some mitigations that can be done? Can't make any promises or commitments tonight because the work hasn't been done, but I want you to be reassured that your concerns are being heard and acted on. And just because we're voting tonight doesn't mean that process ends. In terms of size and scale, there's been a lot of discussion of it. The way I look at it is, yes, the master plan calls for a certain height in our core CBD, but it does specifically say greater heights along the train tracks to maximize economic development potential. You're right, I think Bill West said it doesn't specify, but to me, greater heights is greater heights, right? So 4 stories to 5 stories on the South Avenue buildings, to me, is within that realm of reasonability, especially since it calls for setbacks and stepbacks. So setbacks, building curb to building front, and sort of stepbacks is the front of the building, at a certain level to the next level. I think that you're not gonna see big walls when you're facing at least the South Avenue office buildings, which I've been mostly focused on because that's top of mind for Ward 3 residents. So if I look at my three-step approach in conclusion, I actually think this project is a big win for Westfield, brings far more benefit than drawback, and sufficiently mitigates the drawbacks. It's not perfect, because nothing is. But it does represent a major leap forward for Westfield and our downtown, and frankly, I don't think it changes what we love about Westfield. Our quaint, beautiful tree-lined streets, our wonderful neighborhoods, our wonderful friendly residents, but it does improve the one aspect that we all moved here for, which is our downtown, which we desperately need to preserve. That's why I'll be voting yes tonight.
Thank you, Councilman. And before we move on, I actually want to see if Chris Colley or any of those can address maybe some of the questions that came up this evening. In particular, Chris, I think, and I don't know if Don Sam, our planner, wants to weigh in on this, but some of the comments that came up about the document, I think that was submitted, and the inconsistencies with the master plan, maybe, I don't know if you want to tag team this one, the two of you. Hopefully you all know Chris Colley from Pathology and Don Salmon, our planner. But those are the few things that came up with some of the inconsistencies, the height and density. I think someone had mentioned traffic. I just do want to clarify, someone I thought mentioned that the townhouses across from Lord and Taylor were 75 feet. Can you just clarify that, because that's not the case? So yeah, if you could address, I assume you took notes too, so that would be great, thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mayor, Council, members of the public. I'm Chris Colley. I'm Principal of Topology. Been here the last few meetings, so nice to be back. So the townhouses are up to 40 feet is the base height there.
So townhouses up to 40 feet. I don't know who thought they were 75, up to 40 feet.
So a couple things. We did review the memo, the 38-page memo that was referenced tonight. Reviewed it before the planning board meeting. Reviewed it again this evening. A lot of that memo discusses consistency between the GB2 zoning and the CBD zoning, which are the existing zoning districts for these properties, and the proposed zoning under the redevelopment plan. So just as a matter of procedure, the redevelopment plan supersedes the CBD and the GB2 zoning for these properties. So it removes that existing zoning and places the new zoning, the redevelopment plan zoning, on top of them. The master plan has very, in my mind, specific recommendations related to what the new zoning requirements should be for the properties that are the subject of this redevelopment plan. It's not simply sort of repeal the existing and then whatever. There's detailed provisions in here in the community form plan, which we went through in our prior presentations, and that Councilman Contract just referenced one of them about the greater heights. And that's what really informs the standards here. And that's what we found in our redevelopment plan to be consistent with the master plan, the standards and the redevelopment plan, with that community form plan. And that's really, I think, the critical, or a critical element of consistency. As it relates to the goals and objectives and the guiding principles, we took those very seriously. At the planning board hearing, we went through, I believe, every goal and objective, as well as each of the guiding principles, and discussed consistency with them. I still believe that the plan is consistent with those, and that was the finding of the planning board as well. Don, you seem like you want to jump in here?
No,
Okay.
I'm going to be repeating what you're saying.
Okay, all right. I do want to address the parking recommendation directly, specifically as it relates to parking. So the master plan states, and I had a page number here, one sec. The master plan has recommendations on page 79. And when I say master plan, I'm talking about a unified land use and circulation element. It says any redevelopment plan for redevelopment areas in downtown Westfield should take into consideration the following recommendations. And one of those recommendations, that's the third bullet point, is to quote, take into considerations the recommendations made in THA Consulting's parking plan. And that's a document that's located at the end of the master plan. That THA recommendation, or that THA document, has parking requirements that are recommended for the CBD zone, okay? The master plan does not state that redevelopment plans should whole cloth adopt and implement those recommendations exactly as they're written into the redevelopment plan. It says they should be taken into consideration. And I don't want there to be this impression that we were flippant about taking those into consideration and created minimums and maximums just for the sole purpose of incorporating THA's recommendations. The parking standards that are included in this plan, including for the office, were carefully thought through. They did take into consideration the recommendations of THA. Jim Zullo from THA is right here. And you know, it was stated that topology knows exactly how much the parking that the redeveloper will build will be, and that's where the minimum came from. I think it's critical for people to understand where we are in this process as it relates to office parking. If this plan is adopted and Streetworks is designated, or anyone for that matter, is designated with an RDA, they are going to take that and they are going to go to the market and they're going to try to find tenants. And those tenants and Streetworks will need to operate within the range of the parking standards that are in here. Their tenant might require 2.8, 3.2, 2.5. There's standards that are in the redevelopment plan that the redeveloper and the ultimate tenant will operate within. That's critical to understand. Which is one last thing on that note, and then I'll cede the mic. There's also in the redevelopment plan safeguards to prevent a redeveloper from overcommitting parking. We wanted to make sure that the plan was written in such a way that if a redeveloper commits parking to a tenant in excess of what they have, that the town has some protection against that. So one of the requirements in the redevelopment plan is an office report, which is referenced on page 59 of the document. And basically what that requires is that prior to building permits for office buildings with greater than 50,000 square feet, a redeveloper needs to submit leases or equivalent documentation demonstrating the amount of square footage and the quantity of parking they've committed to that tenant. And if based on that there's insufficient parking to accommodate the peak hour demand, they need to make adjustments accordingly and return to the planning board to either adjust demand or adjust supply. So I say all that to say that we took into consideration the recommendations of THA very seriously. We set standards that we think are appropriate. We think they mitigate potential impacts. We think they protect the town. And we think they're also responsive to market and likely to be in line with what a potential tenant would need.
Chris, could you determine how you came up with commuter parking? The one need for residents over my years on council is they want more commuter parking. And you keep talking about the businesses, but the taxpayers that commute into the city want to know why there's not as much commuter parking. Right now I think it's even, but why not help the residents and have more additional commuter parking?
Yeah. So here's what this plan does with public parking. It lays out where public parking would be and estimates of the number of parking spaces, but this plan does not govern specifically how public parking is going to be managed or how public parking is going to be operated, or frankly, even the exact number of public parking spaces that are going to be created. That's going to be a process that has been underway and is underway, and I know there's a lot of documentation about it on the town's website. I know Jim from THA is here. He might want to chime in at some point. But the redevelopment plan, so the reason why I'm talking about office parking is because the redevelopment plan is setting office parking standards. The redevelopment plan is not setting commuter parking requirements. It's laying out areas where public parking will be, can be, and then that will, the actual construction and design and operation of those garages would be something the town would do.
When you say public parking, you mean for the workers at the office building and the commuters?
Well, I think you're asking about commuters, right?
Yeah, specifically
So that's what I was responding to.
But Mark, you do realize, because I asked this to Chris as well as Liz, listen, it's hard to gauge the future of parking because we're coming out of the pandemic and we've talked about the need to balance not building too much parking when not building too little parking. I think this plan has flexibility. So there are contingencies built into the parking, which Jim can probably go into more detail on. If the projections right now change, there can be changes to the public parking, to the right? You could add more spaces. You could add a little bit more, another height to the garages to add more spaces. I think it's really important that we, excuse me, let's show a little bit of respect, please. So I think we all understand that we're trying to gaze into a crystal ball and try to figure out what makes the most sense several years from now. So I'm satisfied that we have contingencies built in. If we need more commuter parking, it can be created down the road.
Can we just, Chris, before you go, I just, there's a lot of comment on flat surface parking. As a professional planner, what is the, what is the thought about the purpose and the best use of flat surface parking lots in downtowns?
Sure. So it takes us back a couple years because the first thing we did in this process was evaluate whether or not these properties qualified as an area in need of redevelopment. And the baseline for one of our arguments, and really our key argument, was that surface parking in downtown areas represents an obsolescent use. And that's an argument, which you can read the report, it's expanded in much more detail. That's an argument that's we felt very comfortable making, and it's an argument that's supported by case law. So there's a case, Concerned Citizens versus Princeton, that deals specifically with that question as to whether or not surface parking in downtowns is obsolescent and qualifies as an area in need of redevelopment. So yeah, in my professional planning opinion, surface parking surrounding train stations is certainly not the highest and best use, and we made the argument then, and I'd stand by it now, that it's an obsolete use.
Thank you. And Don, I don't know if you have anything to add before Jim Zullo comes up? Okay. Terrific. And actually, Jim, if you could answer two questions, the councilman's question, and then also someone had made a comment about the inefficiencies of the parking garages that are being proposed, so maybe you could address that as well. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. Obviously, parking has been a primary focus in the redevelopment planning, and commuter as well. As Councilman mentioned, NJ Transit ridership is still at 50% of pre-COVID levels, and a lot of people think that has kind of settled as possibly the new norm. No one knows. And the one thing I want to talk about is some of the contingencies. So right now, I believe the public parking plan that kind of gets continually morphed as ideas come through and other suggestions and other opportunities. There are 624 commuter spaces in the Lot 8 and Lot 3, and 599 are physically contemplated to be replaced. There are available spaces underutilized in Lot 6, the Water Street lot, which is basically about 50% empty today. So making up that additional is 25 spaces from there. So basically a replacement or availability of all the commuter parking that exists today is anticipated to exist post-development. That said, the town, we have one of the things that will be done through the shovel in the ground will be a continual monitoring of the utilization of commuter parking, of employee parking, of downtown parking, to look at where, what the demand trends are so that adjustments can be made. And as mentioned, there are contingency plans to possibly provide more available parking for commuters and that type of thing.
But once it's built, I mean, Westfield, you talk to 10 people that work in Manhattan, all 10 commuting in a different way. Some drive to Jersey City, some go out of Linden. When we do finally get a direct train ride into the city, maybe 10 years from now, it's gonna drive demand for parking. So where's the parking gonna be in resident? Once this is built, you only have a certain number of parking spaces, so eventually it's gonna spill into the residential neighborhoods for permit parking, or you just don't have the bandwidth for enough parking.
Well, there, obviously, that's a decision. There are other contingencies that, maybe in 2 years, 3 years, as this development occurs, if there can be, an added level, that type of thing, there are those options. But I do believe, too, the one thing to remember is while nobody really knows the future commuting to New York, but I do agree that the Gateway Tunnel may have an impact, that's 3 days a week. And, that commuting peak is likely, given the work from home scenario, everybody believes that will have a reduced commutation effect at least 5 days a week. So the idea is, are there other creative strategies that can be used to find commuter parking? Maybe it exists in, various places around town already that can be, the town can play a larger role in agglomerating some of those resources, making them available to commuters, that type of thing. So that's kind of the question that is a legitimate question that will be monitored over the next couple of years as these projects are being, developed.
And for context, I think we just got recent ridership data from New Jersey Transit, and in 2019, the average weekday ridership was 2,700 boardings. In fourth quarter of '22, it's 1,100.
Sure.
So it's well below, less than half of what it was in 2019, and they're not seeing it go up exponentially. So even if ridership doubled over what it is today, it's still going to be less than what it was pre-pandemic.
Just related to the garage footprints, I think the reference was to our information is not necessarily what the minimum requirement of a parking garage is, it's what the optimal is. And that optimum relates almost to like a greenfield development, large space. It doesn't typically apply to a downtown place. I would say more than 50%, 60% of the garages facilities that we have to look to design today in downtown, transit-oriented towns have much less efficient footprints than what was cited earlier. It's just, it's the nature of the beast that to have this kind of downtown development, you don't have perfect sites, or you can build things on top of, parking facilities that would increase the height even more. So that's something we deal with every day when we do our parking planning, that, we aren't dealing with optimal sites.
And Jim, just to talk about, someone brought up the inefficiencies of the parking garages, and I know there was a big concerted desire for us to split the parking between the north and the south side.
Yeah.
And I think the gentleman mentioned that that's creating some inefficiencies in terms of the relatively small size of the garages. Can you address that at all in terms of, from your perspective, if kind of what he said was accurate?
Well, I'm not sure if I understood the question, but one thing that was done early on with traffic is the commuter permits are split almost evenly. I think it's 56 or 54 and 46 on the north side, south side, and the predominant amount of that today comes to the south side. So with the north facility and the south facility, you're obviously spreading that more evenly, probably from a commuter standpoint, less traffic related to that. Obviously, if you wanted to do a more efficient, and I'm not sure if I understand completely your question.
I think he was talking about from a cost efficiency. Yeah, cost of construction.
The most efficient, if you have the most efficient site, you will, your costs will be less per space or per square foot. But obviously, like I said, we've done garages in New Brunswick, we've done them in Milburn, we've done them in Ridgewood that have certainly less than perfect sites, but they're pivotal to supporting, your commuter base, their facilities that are needed to provide access to mass transit that I know Westfield is committed to. And, while they are more on a cost per square foot than a very efficient facility. These are facilities that if well-maintained, will last 50, 60 years to support Westfield's future and those commuters. And the other benefit, I think was mentioned, the north facility is going to provide a lot of available parking in the North District, support the downtown, late afternoons, evenings, and weekends. And given my kind of experience in working in Westfield, that has always been a challenge for Westfield because, coming under the tracks and parking in the available surface lots in the South District has always not been embraced. So this facility, commuters start to return from the city at 3, 4. I was there last week at 3 o'clock, saw people getting off the train. There's availability in both of these facilities that will arise 3, 4, 5, well into your evening. And that's when a lot of peak, given the change of utilization in the downtown to a lot of restaurants, a lot of service businesses, that's where we're seeing a lot more peak demand, not just in Westfield, but every community that has a vibrant downtown. The restaurant is really starting to drive, that evening peak hour and on weekends. So you have a very, this north facility will be a really great asset to support some of the challenges that you've experienced in the north side of town.
Jim, will you be the person to comment on what the process is for the ingress and egress of the North Avenue deck, what approvals are needed?
That would be, the traffic engineer expert, that would not be us. But we're very comfortable. I know there was in the letter that was written talking about the multiple the garage will function very, very well from the garage in. There's no awkward turning. It's very efficient. It'll be utilized, it'll be very comfortable and user-friendly facilities. So.
Thank you, Jim. So John Federico, and if you could address the councilman's question, but also,
Sure.
I think maybe you took some notes.
I did take, yes, I
someone
did.
had asked about what they considered inconsistencies
Yes,
with the map. So I'm going to leave it
I
to you to address those too. Thank you.
I can address those. Hi. Thank you, council members and mayor. So I'm John Federico, professional planner and engineer with WSP, working on behalf of the town as the redevelopment, circulation, and traffic review. So specifically regarding access and egress from that North Avenue garage, if you look at the traffic study, the majority of the primary access to that garage is indeed North Avenue and Elm Street. And so during the whole process, it was crucial to kind of look at that intersection, rearrange it. That's why there's this new design with a four-legged intersection to make it work better, because that was intended because it is signalized as being the primary access point so that vehicles can make all movements, lefts, rights, through out of that location. The right in, right out off of North Avenue has benefits, but it's serving a much smaller component of the traffic going into and out of that garage. So that, what we determined is while that provides benefits, it's not crucial to the operations of the garage. That said, an application has gone into NJDOT. We have met with them at the preview center. The initial analysis shows that that driveway meets their conformance criteria in terms of where it's located. It's yet to be determined if they'll approve it because we're working through that process, but we have no indications at this point that it would not be approved by NJDOT. And we'll continue to work with them very closely on that to make the case that it should be. I do want to address, it took a lot of notes on consistency with the master plan because I was obviously very involved with putting together the unified land use and circulation plan. I want to read something from the plan because we had a very nuanced discussion of congestion. Congestion there's trade-offs, and it's especially in a downtown setting in a developed town like Westfield. You have to balance that, and we mentioned many times in the plan multimodal access, balancing it with placemaking, with community feel. And so what I want to read here is, okay, an intersection with an overall level of service D or lower is generally considered as operating acceptably, while a level of service E and F indicate conditions that are at or above capacity and experience excessive delays. However, it is critical to understand the limitations of using level of service as a performance metric. As an auto-oriented metric, level of service does not fully describe the value and function of a street or intersection that needs to serve multiple users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users, and is often at odds with community goals related to walkability, placemaking, and urban design. Even the Highway Capacity Manual, which is kind of like the base of traffic engineering, emphasizes that level of service is only part of a bigger picture, and neither level of service nor any other single performance measure tells the full story of roadway performance. Furthermore, there's growing recognition that a certain level of congestion is acceptable, particularly in a vibrant, transit-friendly community, and that congestion mitigation must be balanced with Westfield's other multimodal travel and community goals. So when I read that and I think about that, I do think that there is a consistency in what this plan is proposing with what was in the master plan.
John, just real quick, when I first got on council, around 12 years ago, there were 25,000 cars that used Central Avenue corridor. Today, there's over 40,000, and that's only gonna grow with more developments in the area. Obviously, people working at these buildings coming off the Garden State. I mean, what's your vision? We're not gonna solve this tonight, but what's your vision of Central Avenue? I mean, cars today jump off, they come over the bridge from Clark, they go down Boulevard, Carlton, Summit. That's only going to increase. So what would be your vision to help prevent that? I mean, is there any plan to widen Central Avenue or?
Well, we're not at that point yet in terms of widening it. Just as Councilmember Contract mentioned, we've been working over the last month with Kimley Horn to do a more detailed study of the Central Avenue corridor. We're going to be looking at the traffic signals along Central Avenue down to Sycamore. We're going to be looking at how they function today with the traffic. It is a heavy traffic street. What could be done to connect those signals to make them work better? And then, looking at whatever potential, traffic cut through there would be onto the neighborhood streets. We're going to work with the town to look at traffic calming and other types of speed management measures on those side streets. So we've got kind of a comprehensive scope in place over the next few weeks to take a detailed look at that, Mark.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure. Okay, is there anything else?
I don't think so.
All right.
I just felt it important for me to say a few words. I was involved with the 2019 Master Plan Reexamination Report, working with H2M. I was involved with Unified Land Use and Circulation element of the Master Plan, again with H2M, and then of course working with Topology and the rest of the team on this redevelopment plan. I've also reviewed the memo from Westfield Advocates. As Chris said, a lot of that deals with talking about inconsistencies with existing zoning. I just hope everyone understands that the redevelopment plan doesn't need to be consistent with existing zoning. It can supersede local zoning, and very often that is touted as one of the benefits of redevelopment. You can have site-specific development standards apart from existing zoning ordinances within a redevelopment plan. The master plan itself, it does speak to greater heights, design guidelines for redevelopment project, and the community form plan that's part of a unified land use and circulation element provides that development framework for what's in the redevelopment plan. And the redevelopment plan, when you look at Chapter 9, it goes into great detail describing that consistency with the vision statement, with guiding principles, with the community form section for each sub-area that's part of this redevelopment plan. That unified land use and circulation element did a deep dive into the downtown area, establishing different sub-areas. Again, the redevelopment plan describes how it is consistent with those recommendations in your master plan element, the unified land use circulation element. And it gives a further refinement of what's in that element, increasing allowable building heights, including the entirety of CBD, we've talked about that. Greater heights and number of stories along the rail line in redevelopment areas, includes again the areas governed by this redevelopment plan. Use of design guidelines to ensure consistency with existing character, such as step backs from upper floor, greater architectural design guidelines. Mixed use development, creation of public spaces, public plazas, visually screening parking from your pedestrian areas. Streetscape improvement recommendations, I don't think that's been mentioned this evening. And locating office and residential uses on the Lord and Taylor site. So, I've looked at these documents, I've been involved with them, I reviewed the memo that was first given to the planning board and then to you, and I mean, it's my opinion that this plan is consistent with the town master plan, based upon all the work that I've seen done on it and what I'm aware of the policies from the planning board who have adopted it and what I believe to be your understanding of it as well. So again, I thought it was important to say that. I've been here. I mean, I referenced not too long ago how the mayor, the late great Robert Newell, and myself did a YouTube video on the importance of the master planning process. And I'm pleased to see as a planner these things coming to fruition, because it's been very often these things do just sit on a shelf and gather dust. But we have an implementation matrix in our master plan documents, and this is helping us to fulfill many of those steps that were identified.
Don, could you comment on some of the other plans you've seen for, such as the Waterson lot and the other lots around town?
Well, there's no redevelopment plan for the Waterson lot. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Right, but you've seen plans from developers to develop that lot. I know the mayor has.
There was one interested developer that came to us for Waterson.
Right.
Yeah, so I have seen something. It was very much in concept, though.
Okay, so there's plans to, beyond this development, there's plans to go further with other developments.
Well, my office receives inquiries for development interest on a constant basis. It's for properties throughout. It's single-family districts, whether people can subdivide or what size house. It's, people wanting to put additions on. We run the whole gamut, of course, in Westfield, what people are interested in doing. So we did see a concept for Waterson, but it didn't move forward.
Okay, but the town and the mayor did see that plan?
I can't comment as to the mayor saw it, but I was in a meeting with the developer who was interested in developing the Waterson Street lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And I just want to add, Don has worked really hard on this, and I do want to thank all of our professionals, Chris and Jim and John and Steve and Liz who've worked so hard on this. And I just do want to make one comment about the planning board, because I think someone intimated that they didn't ask enough questions and that perhaps it was a rubber stamp. But this master plan is the planning board's document. And so it's important to understand that the people on the planning board are the ones that were actually instrumental in creating and adopting it. So there's no group more intimately familiar with the master plan than the planning board. And I also want to acknowledge the level of professionals that our town should be very proud of that represent us on the planning board. We have architects, we have a land use attorney, we have 3 professional planners, we have an engineer, our fire chief, and certainly Councilman Darty and myself and others. It is a highly professional group of people who do this for a living and are being generous enough with their volunteer service to work on behalf of the town. So if they weren't asking questions, it's not because they didn't understand. It's because they absolutely do understand. And I just want to be very clear about that, and that the town should have full confidence in this group of professionals that have been together working on this master plan since it began in 2018. So with that, I think we'll get back. I'm sorry, Councilman Contract. I just want.
Not repeating what I said.
Yes, you're good. I think we're on the record, but I didn't know if there's any other comments from Councilman Looker, Councilman Hapgood.
David, thank you for all your comments. I think it was a very good run-through of pros and cons and how I think a lot of us on the council are netting out. But first, I'd like to thank all of the people, Ward 1 residents and town-wide, who I've had a chance to talk to in this process and have taken the time to reach out to me by phone or email or meet with me at the preview center. Your comments have been heard by not only me, but all of us on the council. Some of your feedback has already been incorporated in the redevelopment plan that we are seeking to approve tonight, and some of it will impact and influence the next steps in the process. I'd like to thank also our tireless and dedicated town planner, Don Samet, and thank you for your comments tonight, Don, as well as all the professionals who have worked to help us understand, the things that we need to take into consideration and have taken the time to answer lots of questions that we have posed over this process. The work that this town council does extends well beyond these meetings. And I think it's important for all of you to know how many hours all of us spend making sure that the decisions that we take are well-informed and fully evaluated and fully influenced by the professionals that we hire to help us in these processes. It's also, I think, important for all of us to realize the work that all of the professionals have done to reimagine what empty parking lots in our town can become in the realization of the collective goals of all of us residents. You know, I think it comes through, even in the people that oppose this project, are interested in a vibrant downtown, a sound and viable financial future for our municipality and our schools, preservation of our history, and a net benefit to our quality of life. I don't think any of us disagree on that. And then I'd also like to say that what I've learned in the 6 years that I've had the opportunity to chair the Finance Policy Committee is there's a lot of things that we would like to do in town. Fix the sidewalks, improve the intersections, build hockey rinks, install new fields, protect ourselves from future flooding, fix our infrastructure that's been in the ground for hundreds of years. And the list goes on and on. But with our current tax structure, we can only create long-term capital improvement plans that are long-term. Take years to do the things that we need to do unless we go out and increase your taxes, not by a little, but by a lot. And I know that's not what any of you are interested in seeing, because I definitely hear, and I myself don't want the taxes to go up. So fortunately, the New Jersey development laws do allow us as a community to achieve all of the priorities that I mentioned: a vibrant downtown, a sound and viable financial future for our municipality and our schools, preservation of our history, and a net benefit to the quality of our life. And we can do all of these things without increasing our taxes. By working with the redeveloper, in this instance, we can realize those goals and also realize significant new inflows of tax revenue that will enable these priorities and these investments in our quality of life and protect the Westfield, for us to do those things and to protect Westfield from the impacts of future downturns. So there are 3 factors that I'd like to highlight behind my decision tonight. One is the chance to work with a property owner who already is our largest downtown landowner and who has also successfully achieved positive net results in other places. They've evidenced their commitment to building something in those other towns, and they've evidenced to us as a council their commitment to building something that's economically sustainable and carefully woven into our community, not creating a new one. My second reason is based on the current projections. The opportunity for our town to see an inflow of up to $140 million or more of pilot monies that we, as a town, will get to invest in things that we together can decide to take on: new firehouse, new fields, resilient infrastructure. We get to decide that together, and that's part of the next part of this process. And those $140 million estimated pilot monies will be on top of the infrastructure improvements that we commit to do in a future redevelopment agreement and that the developer has committed to do. And my third reason is the overwhelming support for this project that I have heard over and over from my constituents. I didn't vote for the Sophia because so many of the ward residents expressed their concerns to Councilwoman Root and myself. And this is completely different. It's hard for you to see all the emails and all the phone calls and all of the people who stopped me in the streets to tell me about their support, the phone calls that I got on my way to this meeting tonight. But I will tell you that I take my decision-making as an elected official quite seriously. And so when I'm saying that I'm voting tonight on behalf of the ward, I mean that. And so tonight, I'm voting yes.
Thank you, Linda. I'll just say Linda's voting for Ward 1. I'm voting for the residents of Ward 3 and across Westfield who are not in favor of the entire project as it is. The consensus, speaking to people across Westfield, is that they're for development. People like a lot of the Lord and Taylor piece of it. When you get to the South Avenue municipal lots, the office buildings are too large, too dense, and people are not against developing that because I think people realize it would be nice to see some development on the south side. So the consensus is people are not against development. The concern is taking one of the lanes away and having parallel parking when it already bottleneck up to Bagel Chateau on South Avenue. The volume of traffic that those buildings will create. No one that lives in Summit's going to take a train to Newark back to Westfield. So that's irrelevant as far as the number of people that'll be commuting via train to these buildings. The town or Streetworks, everyone should have looked at the Central Avenue corridor leading into town, Mountain Avenue coming off 22. These are all already congested areas that should have been looked at prior to this. But more importantly, as far as the development piece, the financials, we're giving Streetworks a no bid contract, 30-year tax abatements for a global conglomerate. I mean, they should be paying their fair share of taxes. Councilman Hapgood did a great job outlining. It is true, people want additional services, but the developer should be paying conventional taxes. If you research pilots, very rarely do they reach their full potential as far as the modeling, as far as what the financials are promised. So I encourage everyone to look at pilots and how they impact. Jersey City no longer involves pilots because of how the school budget's impacted. Mayor Brindle could, if the project goes forward, allocate money to the schools for a pilot program, which is a possibility that could happen. I haven't heard a conversation if that'll definitely happen. I know she's been speaking to the Board of Ed, but these are things down the line. So I just think there's a lot of unknowns at this time. Residents are frustrated by the short process, and Mayor Brindle, by her own admission, started this process in 2018, 2019. The center was opened in September through the holidays, so a lot of residents haven't even had the opportunity. On the weekend, go to different parties. I tell people, they don't even know this is happening. It's on them. People should know what's going on in town. But you tell them there's a preview center, they're totally not in tune with it. But again, residents do need to take ownership of where they live and what's going on in town. But the preview center should have been open for at least another 6 months before we even come to this vote this evening. But for those reasons, I'll be voting no on this project. Thank you.
So I've been framing my perspective on the One Westfield Place proposal through the eyes of a Southside resident, not just as a councilman. We've heard from some that oppose this project tell us how this will ruin our colonial Westfield, but I don't believe that at all. I believe we'll see an increase in our quality of life, an increase in the amount and quality of public spaces that will be within walking and safe biking distance to more of us, and all of that built on empty, non-colonial parking lots, all of it. For the residents of Westfield, our usage and perspective on what our town has to offer us varies based on where we live. I think the town green and the reactivated Southside retail corridor will be great places for Southside residents to gather and live our lives, and it will certainly serve as an enticing gateway to the rest of our downtown. One thing I believe has been lost in all of the public discourse is how absolutely stunning and even cool these structures and open spaces can be. For those that have missed the design presentations on Facebook Live, as well as in this chamber, I personally was blown away by what was presented, from the state-of-the-art cross-laminated timber construction, the Southside office buildings, as well as the reimagined Lord and Taylor building and property. This town will be transformed into a place that people will flock to. From our last meeting, some words from the brave young man, Sam Altman, who I see has left the chambers now, really stayed with me. He mentioned that this project was something that he and other students, and he mentioned it as well this evening, saw as a reason they would also want to move back to Westfield as young adults. Although I have a daughter his same age, it wasn't until then that I realized that this project isn't just for the residents that live here now or that have been here for years, but to create the Westfield of the future. So I believe we have let our progress slip in the last few decades, and our neighboring towns have really caught up to us in many ways. This project brings forth a community that is not only perfect for raising families as we know it, it's fabulous. It would be fabulous for those who want to stay after emptying their nests, as well as being enticing enough to woo the younger professionals back to start that cycle all over again. So for these reasons, I am a resounding yes.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for spending your Valentine's Day with us. I want to thank everyone for coming, and to the professionals, to the mayor, and to the council. And I am the most recently elected person, and One Westfield Place, this redevelopment project, was very much on the ballot. And I've heard from hundreds of people especially last year, especially 3 months ago, 6 months ago, while I was campaigning door to door, as this project again was probably the number one, number two conversation during my election in Ward 1 after the Sophia, or maybe tied with the Sophia. And I agree with Councilwoman Habgood that this project is definitely not the Sophia. And while, yes, there are some residents expressing reservations about some aspects of the development, we hear you, much of the input I received has been positive. I am voting for this project because the majority of my constituents support it. And how do I know that? Well, when I ran for office, and I was elected 3 months ago, again, One Westfield Place was very much the topic of conversation, and the preview center had been opened. I spoke to residents while canvassing. Yep, Ms. Bonacci and Mrs. Goodman, it's a lot of work, right? I know. I met them at the preview center, and while my opponent ran very much against the project, and during our candidates forum here in October, we were sitting right there, she continued to express her sentiments against the project and lost the election 2 weeks later in our Ward 1 election by 12 points. Secondly, I am voting for the project because HBC Streetworks continues to be a good partner with Westfield. When they unveiled the project last year in September, they promised to be the listing developer, and they certainly were, and they continue to be. They have listened and made numerous changes to the project, which have been previously detailed as discussed. I also appreciate that this project has the support of the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Westfield Corporation, which I sat on as a liaison last year. After speaking with our downtown merchants and restaurateurs, the directors of the DWC believe that One Westfield Place will be a catalyst for growth of our downtown businesses. Those are their words, not mine, catalyst for growth. And I think that we can all agree that we want a thriving downtown. And I am satisfied that the experts who provided us with testimony, including tonight, did so based on their knowledge, skill, experience, training, education. As we all know and talked about, the redevelopment plan went before our planning board last week. After reviewing it, the planning board found that this project is aligned with our master plan. I accept their determination and that it was made in good faith. After having spent many hours learning about the project, debating about it, giving my input, running on it, I am satisfied that One Westfield Place is exactly the kind of smart, transit-oriented development that will help revive our downtown, improve property values, help keep our property taxes stable, and positively contribute to our quality of life. One Westfield Place will definitely change our community, no doubt, but it will change it for the better. We are taking a vacant building and parking lots and turning them into a thriving mixed-use development that will bring people to our town to live and work, bringing new economic vitality to Westfield. For all of those reasons, I am enthusiastically voting yes. Thank you.
Last to go. Okay. Oh. I'll go. Folks, so about a month ago, I was sitting downtown in one of our restaurants, waiting for my wife to get off the bus and join me for dinner. As I waited, I couldn't help but overhear the two older couples behind me. They were talking about the proposed One Westfield Place project. Given all the sound and fury currently devoted to this, I waited to hear their objections, and they had none. They were in total support. They had apparently been to the preview center earlier, and they were excited at the ideas they had heard. They were impressed at the chance of attracting new businesses to town. They were interested in the housing options for them as they were getting older, but didn't want to leave Westfield. They had seen the renderings, and they thought they looked great. They aren't the only ones, but they aren't the loud ones. It is always easy to hear the objections to change, and change is hard, and we all know that. But staying stagnant as the world changes around us is naive and leaves us vulnerable as other towns understand the power of flux and to embrace it. Towns like Morristown, which also has a strong colonial past, understand this and are attracting businesses like Deloitte, bringing foot traffic, hungry office workers and new businesses with them. And we keep waiting for the Leader's Store to return. For those who question the scope, please understand that there is nothing gained by half measures. There's no point in committing to a little piece of the vision. There is a little lesser investment, but a far lesser return. And for those who think the council is blindly allegiant to Shelley, clearly you have never seen Dave wax eloquent on the Edison Fields proposal. And you forget my multiple votes against the ice rink. I think Shelley is a great leader, but none of us would follow her to places we don't want to go. We have opportunities here, opportunities for growth and improvement. We aren't going to be the next urban metropolis, so stop listening to the fear-mongering. We aren't going to change the character of the town. It's going to be enhanced. Standing still is going backwards, and we stood still long enough. We've had months of listening, months of inviting people to add constructively, and we have taken a lot of suggestions into account. So many people have offered a lot of great, powerful ideas to make this project even better, and we're extremely appreciative. And clearly, we have an intelligent community with a lot of vision and knowledge. We are grateful for your input. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my own experience living downtown. Like a lot of residents, my wife and I decided to downsize when our kids went off to school. We wanted to stay here in this town we love and decided to really immerse ourselves in the downtown community. We take our dogs around town for their exercise. We walk to our favorite restaurants for dinner. And as much as we love being down here, we can't help but recognize the need for improvements. An enhanced South Avenue retail and restaurant scene, much needed bike lane infrastructure, as well as bike amenities at the train station. A North Avenue town square remade for easier drop-offs and pickups and memorable community get-togethers. And that god-awful intersection at Elm Street and North needs to be reconstructed so it's safer for pedestrians and for drivers. And so while these are just a sample of the benefits, there are so many more contained within the redevelopment plan. A plan that I, along with my fellow planning board members last week, found to be wholly consistent with the town's master plan examination. And to that point, if there are members of the public whose intention tonight is to say otherwise, let me make it clear that we are not here to relitigate the findings of that board, topology, and our town planner. So let me just end by saying we can help make this town better. We can create spaces where other residents will want to live once they no longer need the homes where they raise their kids. We can make parking more accessible to bring in patrons and diners who don't want to troll around for spots. We can improve the sidewalks and green space, increase our restaurant options, and attract stores and businesses that will boost aesthetics and rateables. We have everything we need to make good, better, and better best. And folks, we are poised for success, and the time is now to bring Westfield back to the beauty and elegance that it was before and can be again if we are not afraid to act.
I'd like to reiterate my thanks. I'd like to reiterate my thanks to everybody who has spoken at these meetings and stayed late with us, for all the outreach, the emails, the calls, and the meetings, numerous meetings at the Preview Center, in people's homes, and at various coffee shops. I appreciate very much the engagement and the opportunity to talk through a very, very complicated plan. I want to reiterate tonight also that one of the reasons I believe some of my council members are so comfortable with this plan is that we have been a part of shaping it into a plan that we believe worked for each of our wards. We've made suggestions, they've been incorporated. The plan continues to iterate, and I believe it gets better with each iteration. And I've been listening to everybody. And though it may not always feel like it, there is tremendous support for this plan, like I haven't really experienced on almost any other issue since we've been here. And I hear the opposition, and though I don't agree with all of it, I will absolutely continue to advocate for the best possible outcomes. I do want to talk about some inconsistencies regarding the character, people being concerned about the character of our town by these two projects that will sit along a commercial corridor. And I want to contrast that to the work that this administration has done with regard to historic preservation, really unprecedented, that we have passed a historic preservation ordinance. And I want to acknowledge that it is not lost on me that some of the very people who have a no One Westfield Place sign on their lawn were the same people who said, Brindle, hands off my homes, when we were trying to protect the character of the neighborhoods. Because that was really important to me. I moved to this town because I liked the homes and the neighborhoods, and they were coming down at a rapid pace. And I'm really proud that we were able to come to a voluntary designation of, I believe, 9 homes at this point. And I think that it's also inconsistent that when we took measures to preserve the historic kiosk at the train station that had been left to denigrate, some of the same people that are opposing this plan had a problem with the allocation of funds to restore that, the last possible one in New Jersey. So there are inconsistencies for sure, and I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the work that this council has done to preserve our neighborhoods. I also, for the past 5 years, working with the Downtown Westfield Corporation, have really listened to business owners, and I began to understand viscerally, in a very uncomfortable way, the way I had contributed to the problem that plagues them. I didn't understand at the time that every time I chose the easy way and clicked add to cart, I was becoming a part of a problem with our downtown. Once I realized it, I tried to train myself to really think differently about the way I spent my money. Was it harder to go downtown? Yes. Might it cost a little bit more? Yes. Did I personally think it was worth it? Yes. And it was something that I had to learn by hearing the stories of the merchants. I also listened to experts on economic development and downtown revitalization. And I learned that our problems are not unique, and nor are the solutions. Doing nothing is easy. It is what has gotten us to this point. Tonight, I once again find myself faced with a decision that will impact the future of this town for decades. And tonight, I choose to invest in our future. And I vote yes to One Westfield Place.
Thank you all. I actually don't think I have anything more to add than what has been said here, and I think what I opened my comments with. So with that, Ms. Lashley, can you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Havergood?
Yes. Yes.
Councilman LaGripo?
No.
Councilman Katz?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey?
Yes.
Councilman Contract?
Yes.
Councilman Dardia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the Town Council Conference and regular meetings of January 31st, 2023?
So moved.
A second?
Just note I was absent.
Oh, thank you. Second by Councilman LaGrepo. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Now it's time for open discussion by citizens. Anyone may come up to the microphone and speak on any subject on which we have jurisdiction. Please state your name and address.
Doug, one moment.
Doug,
Just
just
let
wait.
everybody clear out.
Yeah. Huh?
Let them clear out, 'cause
Take a minute while people are leaving.
You say when?
So all right, if those that are leaving could exit, take your seats. So, all right. Okay, I'm sorry, we're just gonna try and get some, if everybody. Okay, please state your name and address.
Doug Miller, 619 Carlton Road. I want to add some comments about commuters and parking. We all know that Westfield is a commuter town. Currently 11%, according to the town's own statistics, have Westfield households that have or are seeking a parking permit. Many more households have commuters that reach the train station by walking, biking, and drop-offs. There are currently, according to Councilman LaGrepo, a 1.5-year waiting list for parking permits. And the council has released a Westfield parking plan designed to show us that the one Westfield Place development will not have an adversarial impact on the parking needs of Westfield commuters. Although that's not true when one reads through the report. And I want to address that from the perspective of the commuter. So according to its submitted parking plan, Westfield has 624 spaces in lots 8 and 3. The new parking plan is going to have a north side parking garage with 248 commuters and a south side parking garage and surface that's going to have 301. That gives us 549 commuter spaces in the parking plan, which is less than what we currently have. In fact, it's only 88% of the current commuter parking. And this reduced availability is not even taking into account the increased demand that's going to occur with new developments such as Westfield Crossing and others get completed. Now, if one looks at the impact of these developments on the commuters, let's look at the north side first. We already talked about that the entrance is going to be next to the Verizon building. That entrance for an exit for that north side garage is less than about 100 feet from the intersection of North Avenue from Central. And this requires a right turn from North Avenue heading east into the garage. Exit requires a right turn heading east into the intersection. This congestion, the upshot of this is that all morning commuter traffic on the north side needs to be funneled into North Avenue through the downtown and then backing up on North Avenue as they wait their turn to get into the parking garage. Similarly, those commuters on the way home will be backed up leaving the garage to turn into the traffic on North Avenue that's stopped at the light at Central. Now, this delay in the morning and the evening, plus the walk to the garage, from the garage to the train station, means that those sorry commuters choosing this garage are going to need to add at least an extra half an hour to their commuting day in the morning morning and evening into commuting in and out of the city. And don't forget that this is gonna happen to 45% of the commuters that are gonna be parking in these facilities. They're at 55% on the south side. Now, the new office towers on South Avenue are gonna have underground parking for 525 spaces for their new workers. We're told the entrance to the office parking will be a right turn from on South Avenue heading west into the spaces. This means that everyone has to go in. It's going to go into this particular parking facility. It's going to have to turn for the offices. It's going to have to turn and go through the Central and South Avenue intersection. And for all of you who have been through this intersection at rush hour, you already know that traffic is backed up along Central. Because I live very close to that, and it's almost impossible to make a left on Central from Park Street. And we're going to have more new office commuters that are coming. It's at least 525 commuters. Many of them are coming from the Garden State Parkway. We've talked about this tonight. So this congestion means that what's already happening is going to be exacerbated. I've already talked to friends of mine who avoid Central Avenue will make a left on Clover and zip down Boulevard. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be Clover, Clifton, Grove, Washington Park are going to be exit points for all these people, flooding the South Side neighborhoods, which is where I live, with commuters that we've had to deal with in past years. Now, many of these commuters in the town.
I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, you're out of time. Thank you, though.
All right. Don't know what's going to hit them.
My name is Claudia Sousa. I live at 500 Montauk Drive. In Westfield, I'm in Dawn's ward. Thank you. I have heard so many interesting points tonight, and I'm glad that I have a chance to talk with you. To be honest, I'm petrified about standing in front of everybody. I really am. This is not what I normally, well, it was when I taught. But the reason we've lived in Westfield for 35 years, my husband and I, and our now 2 grown children. 35 years. To be honest, we did not move here for the downtown. We moved here because we were transferred from the Rust Belt of St. Louis to come to New Jersey for Merck. That's how we were transferred. And we looked at other locations to actually live because Westfield then and now is very expensive. We came here for the quality of the schools, solely for the quality of the schools. Mark, thank you for commenting on what was not going to come, because I actually thought that the Lord and Taylor property would actually be paying taxes. That disturbs me. This is the only reason I'm speaking here. My kids got an excellent education. And I looked at Zillow before I came in to see the ratings of the schools. The high school has 8 out of 10. That is very high, very high. They don't do the elementary schools. They don't rate them. But what we have been told, because we are considering moving just because of taxes, I'm the kind of person you want to keep. I have no kids in the schools. And my husband and I donate our time for free because we're both scientists and we both know what we're doing. We donate our time to help the town for free. Now, the thing is, I mentioned 8 out of 10. That's for the high school. That's an excellent, excellent number. 9 out of 10 is probably.
Yeah, okay. You need to address the council. Your comments are to the council.
Okay, well, I'm addressing them too. Edison School, we're on the south side. Edison School gets 7 out of 10. Edison gets 6 out of 10, and Roosevelt gets 7 out of 10. That's the rating for these. I am very concerned about what will happen. I'm very concerned about what will happen if there is, let me just say, less going to the schools, because it's not decided what will happen to the money that will come from the pilot program. I really want the schools to stay as excellent as they are. Good teachers, excellent libraries, additional classes of various kinds. Whatever we need to prepare our kids for their iterations in life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Sean Smith, 605 Westfield Avenue, over near the high school. To the Council and Mayor, thank you very much for making these meetings publicly available at home. It gives people like myself an opportunity to watch for a couple of hours and then come at the end when it's time for us to speak. I'm not here to talk about One Westfield Place, but as a citizen, I look forward to hearing how the Council and the town plans on using those pilot funds to assist our schools with future infrastructure projects to keep them at the rating that they are. I know that over the last couple of years, it was a nice discussion that occurred with the Board of Ed and a breakdown or more of a creation of a relationship going forward. I hope that continues. I'm actually here about fields. That's what I come here for. But a couple of little ones. Sid Fay, just so that the council's aware, and that Jim, you hear this, probably because of the winter and the fact that we've had rain and not so much snow, a lot of the rocks and pebbles have transferred onto Sid Fay and Houlihan. Games are starting. Soccer played last night on one of the fields, lacrosse was playing on the other. Those rocks, not only do they cause a safety concern for the kids playing on them, but they also cause real concerns for the lasting of the turf. So to the extent that TPW can get there and clean them up, let's see if we can get that taken care of. Edison Field project, let's get going. It's been 4 years that I've been, actually 5 years that I've been coming up here. We've got it approved. I know it's on your plan for 2023. Let's move that forward. And as I talk about moving things forward, I want to see Westfield continue to be a leader in the world of safety, sports, things along those lines. And this year represents the 10-year anniversary of Janet's Law. For those of you on the council that don't know what Janet's Law is, 10 years ago, in 2012, we adopted or we enacted a statute that requires all schools and school boards to have AEDs present both in the schools and on all their facilities. For reasons unbeknownst to me, it was as a result of an 11-year-old young cheerleader who passed away from cardiac arrest at an event. But for some reason, our legislature didn't extend it to municipalities, didn't require municipalities to include AEDs at their sites. Now, some of the councilmen are aware that some of your private clubs have actually reached out over years ago and obtained an AED for down at Houlihan and Sid Fay. But walking around town, we don't have AEDs at all our other fields. There is federal grant money out there. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations that will allow municipalities and assist municipalities in placing AEDs on each of our fields. And everybody listening knows about DeMar Hamlin and the Buffalo Bills safety who nearly dropped dead, but did suffer from severe cardiac arrest in the fields. I think it's time for the town to revisit this issue. I know it was before the council probably 15 years ago, and there was a concern at that point in time about liability to the town. Times have changed. Laws in New Jersey have changed. Schools are required to have them. Schools are required to have them on their facilities, on their fields, in an unlocked box. Let's be a leader. Let's obtain those AEDs for our children and our adult participants who are using all of our facilities in the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Goodman. I live at 322 Arenda Circle in Westfield. I've met with several of the councilmen on discussions of this One Westfield One project. Just a few steps from where we sit is perhaps the most wonderful part of Westfield, Mindawaskan Park. The place is special. What makes this part of Westfield great is that it has winding walkways, bridges, beautiful lake, a large lawn with a gazebo, There are delightful older trees, fountains, and geese and ducks, and you can even sit on one of the park benches and have your lunch or an ice cream. There are no giant building structures here to obstruct your view. This is Westfield. Sometimes you have to look more at what you have than what you want. I know I'm not alone in loving this park. I walk here often. Many non-residents come here all times of the year. They get married, they take wedding pictures, or have small ceremonies. What makes this place attractive to everybody is its ambience, its charm, its walkability, its visibility, and its convenience. You just have to walk a few steps and you're on Broad Street. It's so simple. And as we know, there's a master plan to keep Westfield current with the times. The administration attests that our town is in decline and we need a reservation. Businesses are closing and we need to add more businesses and apartments to keep those other businesses afloat and prevent them from closing. Let me remind you that all businesses go through ebbs and flows. If you haven't owned or run a business in your life, you won't know that. I hope some of you at some point in your life have had to have a visit for a lunch or dinner at the Boathouse in Central Park. This was a wonderful, difficult to get a reservation restaurant in a beautiful park setting right along the lake. It was open for 50 years and closed its doors forever this October. It wasn't a transportation issue. It wasn't a reservation issue. It wasn't that it lacked visitors or local businesses. Like other businesses in New York and even Westfield and other towns, crap just happens. You can't always predict or prevent rises or falls. To have the thought that you completely change the future of a city by changing the parameters, the topography, the building heights, or adding small town greens, or by adding large parking structures and increasing enormously the size and scope of office space in town, I feel is illogical. The walking wallets from the new businesses, that is, if they fill up the vacant office spaces, will at 5 p.m. run, not walk home. They have family and other obligations, more important than to spend most of their evenings supporting Westfield. Lunch will most likely be inside or a short walk from the office location, again, for the convenience. So in this master plan, why build all these huge structures? Is bigger better, and for whom? Is newer better, and for whom? And more businesses better, and for whom? Empty office space is universal in today's times. Now, do we talk about security in the master plan? I've asked several times, where's the new firehouse? How do emergency vehicles get access into the North Avenue train station, especially around cars waiting for pickups or Ubers, and cars trying to get out of the garages? The fire chief was at the dais at the planning board last week and made no mention as to the location of the new firehouse, which I have asked countless times. I came for a different answer when I came here. I was hoping that there'd be an understanding that some of the populace would be accommodated by some changes in the direction of the councilman. I ask now that once this is passed, you hear some of these people loud and clear, and it's not just them, it's numerous people of Westfield themselves. Listen to what we have to say, incorporate in your plans. I'd like you to bring down the height of some of these buildings and make some more accommodations. I thank you very much.
I'm back. I hope I get it right this time. I'm so sorry. What happened was I came right in the door. I thought it was late, and I'm an idiot. But I appreciate your patience and thank you, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope everybody had a nice one. Okay, Rob Galgano, 939 Boulevard, again. I had this whole speech prepared. I didn't realize you'd be voting, and then there would be comments. So I have to kind of self-edit as I go. So I wanted to talk about, I guess, the atmosphere around this whole thing. I was in favor of it. I'm glad you passed it. I thought that the group that was against it had a lot of problems, mainly because they were consisted of 3 subgroups. People who had genuine concerns, and they like Lord and Taylor, and they don't like the other part. That's reasonable, I guess. But then there were people who opposed the entire thing, or most of it, but still would complain about traffic and parking without realizing that this entire plan holistically is meant to solve those things, like through flow of traffic and the other parking issues we've got. But these people, I think, were a little meaner. I know that people like myself who support the project would be accused of being a shill or a minion, and we don't appreciate that. Finally, there was a very vocal group. It was very extreme, I found. They didn't want any development at all. And they would resort to online intimidation, like saying, this is our town, not yours, or you need to be gone and gone soon. And some of you being accused of corruption and self-dealing. And we know that's just not true. But I found that very bothersome, personally. I don't like it. As I know, I'll say that when I walked in here tonight, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I don't usually come to these, but I really felt the weight of it. You know, this is serious business. You're serious people. And I think the clowning around out in the world needs to stop. It's done. It's passed. I'm very happy about it, and I think a lot of people are as well. I just think that the opposition did not ultimately get a coherent, compelling set of reasons. They tried, but they didn't convince anybody. They didn't convince anybody to vote the other way on the planning board. They didn't do so as well among yourselves, council people. And they failed to rein in the more extreme elements of their group. And I was going to remark about this poll, even though it's kind of irrelevant now. But as you know, they couldn't muster 849 theoretically valid no votes in a community with 30,000 residents. It was the simplest form of civic engagement possible. Fill out a short form on a computer screen. And yet they couldn't convince even 900 people to do that, despite a highly visible online campaign. I know that anyone paying close attention to the process would know the areas in question were declared in need of redevelopment beginning in September of 2019. An article regarding the Lord and Taylor property on Patch.com from May of 2020 quoted the mayor, stating HBC could move forward with an as-of-right development and/or tenant that may not be in the community's best interests. So I ask that you stay informed, engaged, and open-minded as the redevelopment process moves forward. Those were your words, Mayor. You see, in the end, it's all been done in secret behind your back, in an out in the open and in front of your face kind of way. Simply put, I think this is a town government run by people who know what they're doing. This has all been in the works for years. I don't think anybody should fault you for using the tools available to implement the town's master plan. And I was going to say it's long past time to pass this development plan, but we got that done. We've been waiting decades to move forward, as other towns do. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for your efforts in general. Thank you.
My name is Michael Armento, 30 Sandra Circle. Mayor and members of the town council, thank you for letting me speak. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Lou Grippo for being the lone voice of reason on the town council. I was hoping to stand before you to implore you to put a pause on the redevelopment project, but obviously that's a moot point now. A non-binding referendum would have been requested by the townspeople, but we were told it's not possible. Whether that was an interpretation of the law to satisfy your own agenda is a discussion for another time. However, the town council did have the ability to put a pause on this project, which would allow for more time for this to be discussed, further reviewed, and assessed. However, you opted not to do that either. You seem beholden to Streetworks rather than your constituents. Streetworks does not care about Westfield. They care about only one thing, making money. If you do not realize that, then you should not be leading our town. As you have heard, there are many inconsistencies with the UCLC, and the town council has ignored it and actually belittled the findings, as other people have, but it was a very valid document. The town survey indicated the citizens did not want a change in the charm and the look of the town. They did not want increase in the heights of the buildings, yet the master plan calls for heights to be increased over 50 feet and for further redevelopment planning indicating 65 and 75 feet, including 5 extra feet for machinery on top of the buildings. From the start, the plan goes against the wishes of town people who filled out the survey commissioned by you. And there was only about 800 people in that survey, and that was commissioned by the town. So I think the other surveys and petitions had much more numbers. There was almost 2,200 signature petition asking you to put a pause on this project. This is not a few vocal people. This is a petition that was done in 60 days and had signatures more signatures than the town survey had participants. In addition, Tap Into Westfield conducted a poll with over 1,000 people against the project and 300 for it. Anecdotally speaking, in which I don't like to speak in anecdotes, but since the mayor has mentioned that, I'll quote, a lot of people have emailed me to support, which we may consider using the Open Public Records Act to review these emails to see if there's substance behind these comments. I would like to give 2 anecdotes. Last week, I came to the planning board meeting. I walked into the meeting with a woman who I just met at the door. She told me she just moved to Westfield. She moved from New York. Her comment, I asked her, is she for or against this project? She looked at me and said, this project is crazy. She laughed at the comparison to Bryant Park, a park that is in the center of one of the biggest cities in the world. Another person who lives in town I was talking to, he was actually neutral on the project. His reasoning was that he doesn't really go into Westfield much because of all the traffic and poor parking. Both of these are going to be getting worse based on the numbers provided by street work. Another area that goes against the town survey results, which is to improve parking, but in reality does not, no matter how you twist the numbers. The project will definitely change the face and charm of Westfield with its large buildings, increased traffic, and less parking. People who oppose the opposition indicate the votes of the previous elections indicated the town was for this. However, this is not true. People who voted for you and supported you are against this. We are not against redevelopment, but overdevelopment. This plan came out in September. There was only a short time to one election for one council seat, not to mention that a lot of the planning occurred during the pandemic when people were concerned about living and dying, not redevelopment. Presently, there's litigation in Westfield over Sophia's Place. I read in the TAP, the citizens of Scotch Plains are suing Westfield over the cell tower, and the mayor of Scotch Plains may join the lawsuit. Not only are you angering your townspeople, you're angering adjacent town people. And based on the outcome of the vote tonight, you'll be now facing more litigation. Based on our recommendations, you could have solved this problem simply by taking a pause and reassessing this project. We hope you would have made proper decisions based on all the information that has been provided. Unfortunately, you did not. And there is recourse for politicians who take up their own agendas at the expense of their constituents, including the mayor and possibly town council members. If 850 people who signed the survey got only 8 registered voters to each sign the recall petition that is being formulated, there'll certainly be enough signatures to initiate a recall for mayor. Mayor Brindle, your legacy may be the first female mayor of Westfield. It may be this insane overdevelopment project, or it may actually be the first female mayor of Westfield that was recalled. You've stated that the people opposed to this project are a small vocal minority, but in actuality, it may be a large silent majority. Your last election you won with less than 8,000 votes. A recall petition with 6,400 votes would be a large first step in changing the leadership of this town. Thank you and good night.
All right, Bob McNamara, 603 Lawrence Avenue. I would have hoped that members of the council would have appreciated that the speakers who opposed segments of the redevelopment plan did so with good intentions. We did. But I want to address Councilman Dardia in particular and his comments about fear-mongering. You should be ashamed of yourself. That was really uncalled for. All of us who spoke on the issue spent hours reviewing the redevelopment plan, came to you with reasonable modifications to the plan. There was no one who said, leave the status quo. No one said, do nothing. But you said that that's what we said. Again, your comments were unprofessional and divisive.
Craig Casco, 434 Everson Place, 51-year resident. I want to pay homage, tribute to Chad Kroger and J.T. Parr, two West Coast Laguna Beach Town Council icons. So with that, I say, what up, council, and I'm stoked to be here tonight. When I say I've been a resident for 51 years, in no way is that to diminish any other resident that has lived here for a shorter period of time. It's to emphasize the fact that I've watched how Westfield has changed over the last 5 decades and is in desperate need of redevelopment. Westfield's redevelopment is long overdue. I want to thank you, those of you that have come out to these town council meetings in opposition against One Westfield Place and its current proposal. That includes some of my neighbors and actually a Westfield High School classmate of mine that was here tonight that I got a chance to speak to. I want to thank you, or thank all those that have come here in support of One Westfield Place. I can remember meetings in the early 2000s and through 2010s that were attended by maybe a dozen people. People sitting in this chambers. Nobody cared or felt it important enough to attend meetings. It seemed like town council was on cruise control. Thank you to the town council for following through with what many of you campaigned on, taking the necessary steps to revitalize our downtown by moving forward with this plan. Hindsight being 2020, if we go back to the fall of 2017, this mayor campaigned on doing something to revitalize this downtown, our downtown. Mayor Brindle, when you ran again in 2021, your opposition used the downtown's vacancies against you. Vacancies that had existed before your first campaign for office in 2017. Now trying to do something about the downtown's demise is being used against you. Now you're being accused of overdevelopment by actually doing something like you said you would do, development that was proposed back in 1999. And for that, I commend you. You're embarking on a plan that past administrations have passed the buck on, kicked the can down the road, turned a blind eye to. Westfield became complacent in the early 2000s and after 1999, Downtown Westfield Improvement Plan was presented that shows exactly what we see being proposed and passed now. Anyone can Google Westfield Downtown Improvement Plan 1999, and it's all right there, and it's on the town's website. This is how government works. Checks and balances, debates, town council meetings, free public speech or free speech during public comment, disagreements, agreements. It's a democracy despite the fact that there are those that don't agree, and that's okay. In all my years of attending town council meetings, witnessing projects get passed without much public outreach, I can attest to the fact that One Westfield Place has been the most vetted project from a public input point of view. That includes a preview center, town council presentations, public outreach by the town council, surveys, email correspondence, and much more, including social media outreach and debate. They are all examples. Colonial Westfield is the Miller Corey House. I first visited that Miller Corey House on a field trip in 1972 as a second grader at Franklin School. Westfield was settled in 1664. We were known as the Westfields of Elizabethtown. That's how we got our name. This is Westfield 2023, and Westfield will continue to transform. We have to. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, but most importantly, thank you, Mayor Brindle, for following through with probably the most important campaign promise made by any Westfield elected official in the last 20 years, and that is doing something to revitalize the town we all love. Thank you.
Tony Laporta, 409 North Chestnut Street. So, open discussion by citizens. I do have a few things to say. First, I want to recognize Councilman LaGrippo. He is a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I was the first Democrat elected from the north side of town in the town's history. I don't know if many of you realize that. But Councilman LaGrippo was just honored by his party, Union County Republican Party, for being the Councilman of the Year in Union County. Councilman of the Year. And, you know, we're small, we're a small town, we're all friends, neighbors, and I think it would be fitting, Mayor, if you were to give Councilman LaGrippo, I'm very happy that you clapped, Councilman LaGrippo, some kind of citation that he was honored by his party as Councilman of the Year. I truly mean that. I speak as a Democrat. Councilman LaGrippo is a Republican. Okay, a few things. I congratulate the members of the town council that were in favor of this plan, though I'm totally against it, for your victory. Now, you may think you won, and you may think the game's over, but you know what? This is the first inning. This is the top of the first inning. The people that have been against this plan, and the two groups that have formed, the advocates and the residents, they haven't been up to bat yet. They're going to get up to bat soon. I believe there's going to be some major changes in this, if it goes forward at all. One thing that really bothers me is the position that the town council has taken, the mayor and town council and the town attorney, on the legality of the referendum. I challenge you to have the referendum in November. So you say, why would you want a referendum? We just passed it. The non-binding referendum, think of it as a public question. That's really what it is. It's a public question. Has no force of law. I've heard you say up here that you've gotten phone calls and emails, congratulations, people stop you on the street in a supermarket, they're all in favor of it. Okay, so let's look at it. The TAP runs a survey. 70% of the people vote against it. 70%. Look at the people that are against this plan. Mayor, many of them were former supporters of yours and friends of yours. You got to really think about this. So it's easy to say, oh, I get a lot of phone calls, everyone's in favor of it. Prove it. I challenge you to have the non-binding referendum in November. It's a public question. So then it comes down to the legality of it. Town council, the town attorney has said, we'll be sued. Sued by who? By the developer? The person we're supposed to trust? They're going to sue us for something that's totally legal? I would bet big money that would never happen. So the town attorney, it's his job to advise the town council. I think he's done a poor job in this. Again, I will cite a document that you all have from New Jersey Appleseed, a pro bono law firm. I had gone to them and I asked them about this. They didn't do it for the money. They're a pro bono law firm. Question, does the explicit prohibition in local redevelopment housing law against a citizen's statutory right of initiative and referendum regarding matters subject to that law reach public questions placed on the ballot by a municipality for non-binding advisory vote? Answer, no. The New Jersey Supreme Court has explicitly held the prohibition found in a municipal land use law against the voter's right to repeal a zoning ordinance does not apply to non-binding votes on question placed by a municipality on the ballot pursuant to NJSA 1937-1, Great Atlantic Pacific Tea Company versus Mayor and Council, Borough of Point Pleasant. She goes on to say, it is because of New Jersey Appleseed's expertise in this matter that I understand that you, meaning me, a member of two community-based organizations, Westfield Advocates and Residents for Westfield, have asked for our opinion about the question stated above. Contrary to public statements.
Ms. Laporta, you're out of time. Thank you.
You wouldn't let me finish
No,
a couple of words, Mayor?
No, we're done. Thank you.
Oh, come on, Mayor. All right. You know how I feel about it. I challenge you to have that referendum. Do it in November. If you really think everyone's in favor of this, prove your point. Show me to be wrong. And you know what? If I am wrong, I'll come here and I'll apologize to you. Thank you, Mayor.
Hi, my name is Rob Dalgleish. I live at 825 Prospect. I just made a couple notes as this was going on, and I feel like people raised some important and addressable issues in opposition to this plan. And I understand the desire to get to yes, and what was it, no plan is perfect, and we can't just do nothing. But I guess I don't see why voting for a flawed plan or staying stagnant is our only choice. That seems like a false choice. So I wouldn't ask you to do nothing. I'd actually ask you to do more and work on the plan and present it when it addresses some of these issues and is better for everybody. Thanks.
Anybody else?
So to continue where I left off, I have 7 pages of
please state your
Susan
name?
Goodman, 322 Arundel Circle. If you don't know me by now, you will, because I'm going to be here every 2 weeks for the next 3 years. I see a lot of procedural social injustice here. Let's start with Sophia, the Edison turf fields, the cell tower. Oh, those poor Scotch planes. How would you like to have a cell tower on the other side of the fence of your swing set? And now this. So you know, you all live in nice neighborhoods.
Ms. Goodman?
You don't live on North Avenue.
Ms.
You don't
Goodman,
live.
could I just ask a favor? Could you stand back from the mic just a little bit?
You don't
We'll be
live
able to
on
hear you
North
better.
Avenue.
Thank you.
You don't live on Clark Street towards the Y. You don't live on Charles Street. You don't live on the end of Boulevard or Summit that's close to town. None of you live close to town except for you, and you sold your property. So maybe you're getting ready to move on.
Ms.
I don't know
Goodman,
what you're
Ms.
talking
Goodman,
Okay? No.
Ms.
I
Goodman,
would like to just say that I live in town, 1 Lincoln Plaza.
Well, he's in town, but none of you are in the center of town. So
I'd like to
you
say
could
that
all
I'm in the
say we
center
live
of
in
town, Ms.
beautiful
Goodman.
neighborhoods. You could all say we live in beautiful neighborhoods, but those poor people, I talk to them close to the center of town, and they're all afraid of what's going to happen. So you're so self-assured. I know there are people that are for it, but you're so self-assured that this is wonderful. So I'm going to continue to go to every ward, and I'm going to go to door, and we're going to see how many people really love it and those that don't. It was young people as well as old people. We're not tired of change, and we're not afraid to change. They're afraid of the vastness of this project. They're afraid of the financials of this project. They're afraid it's going to change downtown so drastically. They're afraid that they're never going to be able to fill all the storefronts and the retail. It goes on and on and on. I've been to over 200 houses, and 80% are not for your project. So I don't know who you're talking to, but I'm going to continue. If you're so self-assured, I will continue to go from door to door. You know how I present myself? Hello, I'm a resident, a longtime resident in Westfield, and I would like to know what you think of 1 Westfield Place plans as they presently are. Occasionally I get somebody that says, I love it. I said, great. Thank you for answering the door. Have a good day. I smile. I don't try to convince them any different. But what I do get is, project? What project? We have a project in town? Or, yeah, I've been hearing something about that. Or, yeah, I'm really confused. I'm not quite sure. What are we getting? What's happening? What's going on? I don't like it. I like some aspects of it, but I don't want the height of it. I don't want to get rid of my parking lots. I don't want to sell town property. I don't really think I like this pilot project. I don't like the financials. One gentleman said, my wife, she loves Mayor Brindle, but I'm going to sign your petition because this is just not right. So don't be afraid. You're real confident. I'm going to continue going from door to door because these residents need to know what they're getting, and many of them don't know what they're getting. They're too busy, or they're afraid to come up here. They think you're intimidating. They don't feel comfortable talking to you. They don't feel comfortable going down to Elm Street. They're busy just trying to get through life. And what I'm afraid of is 4 to 7 years from now, when you're probably not going to be in office anymore, these people are going to drive up and down North and South Avenue and say, oh my God, what the hell happened here? I didn't sign up for this. I came to be in a suburban town. If you like Manhattan so much, you like to shop where you work, why don't you just go back and live there? Don't screw my town.
Good evening, Frank Fusaro, 422 Stanley Avenue. I apologize in advance. I'm going to skip around a little because I didn't realize the protocol of this evening's meeting was going to be first with details of the plan and then secondly with comments. So again, I apologize in advance if I jump around a little. Chris Colley of Topology, once again, did not address the loss of commuter parking and the lack of any additional shopper parking, which we have needed for the past 30 years. We do not need night and weekend parking. No one shops in our downtown stores at night because simply they're closed. As I mentioned at previous meetings, trains to New York City depart from the south side. So why are we constructing a parking garage on the north side, which is 33% larger than the one on the south side? Not to mention the ingress and egress nightmare at the north side parking deck, which will never be approved by New Jersey Department of Transportation. I would also like to point out what several council members have said in response to emails from their constituents. While referring to the opposition, Councilwoman Habgood calls out, and I quote, "the few who oppose," as well as, quote, "the small but loud minority of people." Over 2,000 people is not considered a few who oppose or a small but loud minority. Where is your majority, and why have we not heard from this majority? The opposition has provided testimony from concerned architects, planners, engineers, real estate executives, and traffic experts, which have all been ignored. At the last town council meeting, over 30 residents spoke in opposition to this development, yet only 12 spoke in support of it. Is that the majority that you're calling for? I just don't see any majority here. It appears, and by the way, you keep saying that you want people to come up and speak. Only testimony that's given at these meetings is considered necessary or relevant, I should say. I just don't see the supporters showing up in support in mass numbers of this project, as you've stated. It appears that the council is taking a page from the national political playbook, in that any information that is presented which does not agree with your belief, it is simply called out as fake news or misinformation. The facts have been presented by numerous opponents are not fake news and should not be labeled as such, simply because you disagree with them. By rushing through your vote this evening on Valentine's Day, you have done a gross injustice to our town. Thank you.
Jim Boyes, 122 Ferris Place. A little change of pace. I know tonight you're going to be voting on an ordinance to amend the vacant and abandoned property ordinance, I believe. And I'm just curious, how many people have actually, how many developers or property owners have actually self-reported under that ordinance to date? Does anyone know? Because it doesn't really make much sense to have an ordinance that requires the, if you will, the offending party to report on themselves. And if there's been no registrations in that regard in the past 3 years, rather than having our town attorney spend time amending an ordinance that's not being enforced to any degree, then I would just say just scrap it. But if anyone has those stats on the number of properties either abandoned or vacant that have been self-registered, I would be interested to know that number. Perhaps, is it the town clerk who keeps that? Okay, I'm sorry, Jim. Well, if anyone has that information, I'd be like to know it. Thank you.
Hey guys, Dave Vecca, 222 Midwood Place. I just want to say congratulations to you guys on the yes vote. Really happy to see it moving forward. I think it's going to be great for the town. I was thrilled to listen to the professionals respond to a number of the inquiries tonight that people are saying they didn't respond to, as if that didn't just happen 5 minutes ago. I would also add to the Westfield advocates and all the other ones, I would love to talk to you guys more about it, because I don't understand the anger and indignation over it. Like, I know you guys feel really strongly, but it's a building. Like, just, I really just can't wrap my head around the anger you're bringing to the issue. It's a building. It's not gonna ruin the town. I would like to know more. Seriously. You can find me on Facebook, you guys know. Thank you guys, great job. Thank you for representing the town and all that you do. And keep up the good work.
Okay, here I am again, Carla Bonacci, 603 Lawrence Avenue, and I'm glad you're all still paying attention and putting your papers down. So, yes, we're Westfield advocates and residents for Westfield, and we work together. We have a concern over responsible development. What we've always asked for is that you try to build consensus and that you compromise. Yes, no plan is perfect, but the first plan is definitely never perfect. Now, I have worked, and I've told you before, for the last 22 years, since September 12th, on the most complicated project in this country. And what I don't see here, what I saw there, is compromise, is consensus, is caring, is inclusivity. You've done none of that. You try to belittle us. We have a petition. All we have to listen to is you're not satisfied with the numbers, tap into, tried to appeal to people's requests for polls, and then they get belittled. People are concerned with the size and the scale of this project and the financials and the long term and the length of time in the middle of an active community. And a lot of us have actually done those projects for our career. We know the pitfalls. We have tried to share with you, but we don't get any responsiveness. And that's why there's anger. We walk door to door. Even I've done it. When I hear what people say, it makes it closer to home. It gives me real facts. It lets me understand where people are coming from. I don't think any one of you set up coffees in your constituencies to explain to them the plan, other than what you did in the Sophia, and then people were mad and you got upset, right? So when you talk to people, you actually have to listen and you have to make change. And that's what we don't see here. So yes, your plan is not perfect. We didn't want to look like every other town. We can go from Roselle to Plainfield. We have a beautiful board with all of the projects that are being built. And guess what? The most projects are being built with apartments in Westfield, over 870, more than any other town from Roselle to Plainfield. So I guess you're doing a great thing because you wanted to catch up with the Joneses, and now you're surpassing them, but with something that really won't be nice. You don't have to believe me, but I know what I'm talking about. So do a lot of other people. We really just wanted you to listen, Shelley, and go back to the developer and make them make adjustments. They do it all the time. That's what developers do. But you have to talk to them and make them change. So we hope that you will. We're figuring you're not going to, and we will deal accordingly. We are not going away. We're here to stay, and we're going to be watching and holding you all accountable.
Hi, Liz Mulholland, 1029. I actually came up here to speak about educational funding because I heard that there was a question, but the last speaker was so absolutely arrogant and disrespectful. I just have to tell you, As a resident here, that kind of toxicity is exactly what we don't need here. And I am very frustrated that there has to be this hatred and anger simply because they don't like a project. It's not necessary. It's a small community. We all know each other. It's just completely unacceptable. I apologize on behalf of the community for the way you were spoken to. It's disgraceful. You guys have been meeting several times with the residents, numerous times online, on the Facebook. We can meet with the mayor and the council at the preview center. Just atrocious behavior. Anyway, what I wanted to tell you was, when we're talking about public education funding, there was a woman here. Yeah, hi. I'm a public advocate, public school advocate, and I work with legislators at the State House to try and protect public schools and work on funding. I also have a master's degree in education. I've been in the field for over 30 years. Pilots do not impact public school funding. The public schools will always be fully funded. And I also wanted to say great news, because I heard that there was a little concern about our rankings. We have 2 blue ribbon schools in our district. Yay, go Westfield. As we know, we have top-rated schools, always have. And another little piece of information, blue ribbon schools are forever. Once you're designated, it's a lifetime. So always great news to hear. And I just wanted to clarify that our schools will always be fully funded, pilot or no pilot. So thank you.
Okay, hearing none, I close this portion of the meeting. And Ms. Mulholland, thank you for addressing the school funding. I didn't know if you wanted to mention that or deals adequately. I was just gonna, there were 2 things, Ms. Souza, I think that was your name, Ms. Souza, right? Yeah. Just to reiterate what Ms. Mulholland said, the pilot and the tax rate has no impact on the schools. They are always fully funded. And so that's just really important to remember. So the schools always get paid first out of the tax dollars. You don't have to worry about schools losing funding. And the other part you mentioned is that you might move because of taxes. Well, one of the things that we're actually trying to solve for is to be able to provide a revenue stream that will stabilize and potentially lower taxes over time. So folks like you don't have to make a decision to move because of that. So schools are always fully funded, irrespective of a pilot, and we have the opportunity to actually make Westfield more affordable for people who might otherwise consider leaving. So just want to make sure that you are very clear on that.
And I will add, Mayor, if you don't mind, because I think it's important to understand that even though the developer here would not be paying conventional taxes, what they are paying is a payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot, and the monies that come to the municipality under those types of arrangements are greater than the percentage of taxes that would come to the municipality under a conventional tax regime. So the municipality now has more monies to cover, as I mentioned earlier, cover a whole bunch of things that are on our wish list for improvements in town, including things that we can do to help the schools. And we're not planning to make an upfront commitment to the schools because the pilot is a 30-year agreement. And there's no way for us to know what things the schools might need today in year 25, 26, 27. So we've made a commitment to work with the schools to help them with the things that they have in the capital improvement category that they would not be able to cover on their own. And a perfect example of that is the Edison Fields project, where we've been working very closely with the schools to help improve their fields behind the school building.
I just want to add, Mayor, the way pilots work, it's true, as Ms. Mulholland said, the school's always going to be fully funded. The difference is where that money comes from. It's broken down into conventional taxes. So if these pilots don't reach their revenue projections, then it's going to be up to all of us to make up the difference. And that's the difference with pilots. Conventional taxes, the money is guaranteed. With a pilot program, it's all based on projections. And if you look at the history of pilots in New Jersey, they don't reach their projections. So in 25 years, no one's going to go back to say in 2023, Westfield didn't make their projections based on the pilot that we're offering. So it is true the schools will be fully funded. It's just a difference of if it's the developer or corporate taxes paying, conventional taxes, or the residents. And Mrs. Goodman, if you'd like to walk with me in the third ward, I'd be happy to walk with you.
I just,
We're gonna do that, take these and make sure that people have
Yeah, well,
I
I mean,
just think
you're
it's-
being
and I-
sarcastic.
I-
Wait,
no.
wait. Yeah, please, no, you can
No,
speak,
but
but.
why is it okay,
No,
Councilwoman
I'm
Hapgood
saying
speaks?
you can speak. I'm
Okay.
just trying to manage it so everybody's not
Okay.
speaking at the same
Good.
time. Please direct your comments to me and we can go accordingly.
Councilwoman Hapgood's, jumping in saying it's not accurate. It's 100% accurate. Everyone agrees the schools will be fully funded. It's just where that money comes from.
So,
Wait,
yeah, go ahead, David.
Mark, I just think it's important for the public to understand that if the pilot's not offered, this project doesn't get built. So you're talking about future revenues that will never happen. So you do understand that.
Well,
So it's also important, let me finish, that this project will still pay conventional taxes on the land. The pilot's only on the improvements. So if anything, actually, with the town selling the land, there'll actually be more conventional taxes generated than current, because the town will be selling municipal parking lots that don't generate any taxes. So you're raising a fear about, let me finish, Mark. You're raising a fear about future revenues that will never happen if if the pilot doesn't go through. You know that, and you're purposely raising a fear.
Let me just say, David.
wait, I just want to tell you the order. You direct your feedback to me and I direct who speaks. Ms. Hapgood was next.
But she
and
cut
then
me
you
off.
can
How was she
follow.
next?
Sorry.
Did
I
you want to,
didn't-
oh, I
yes, I
thought,
would, no, I would like to say
I
something.
thought she was,
Let me just say, Mayor, David, how much does Lord and Taylor pay in property taxes today? Do you know?
Yes,
Lord and Taylor pays, I believe it's around 450 or
actually 550,000.
So you got to realize that property is coming off the tax roll, the conventional tax roll.
No, but
The land piece of all this is only $73,000. So don't give this exorbitant number. It's $73,000, the land piece.
so I'll give you the facts.
Oh,
At the
wait,
end of the-
mine aren't factual. You know that.
Well, what comes off the tax rolls, because the parking lots now go on the tax rolls, what comes off the tax rolls is about $120,000 net. What comes into us is about $4.5 million, right? So you could argue that the 120 is coming off the tax rolls, but 4.5 million is coming in via pilot. I'm sorry, this is not for the public to comment. This is a conversation among here. So, if you have anything to add, because I was going to address some of the other comments, did you?
I think we're done.
We're done on that.
Thank you.
Let me just address a couple other comments that came up. Trying to think the order of things. Let's see. Ms. Goodman, just for the record, in terms of who lives where, I live right off of North Avenue, right at the intersection of South Euclid and North, where all that development is happening currently. I look at new apartments, the entire intersection is my neighborhood. The north and central intersection is my intersection. And so I am absolutely impacted and affected by all that development. And so this is not a back and forth, and this is not shouting from the gallery. I'm just explaining to you in terms of when you make the claim that none of us live in the area, I live in probably one of the most affected areas, and know it well. And I welcome the investment along North Avenue. It's a significant improvement over the blight that exists there today. I also want to mention mention all the apartments that are happening. The majority of those apartments were part of our affordable housing settlement that was approved by previous administrations. I would say of the 800 and some you mentioned, there's 500 at least that are from an affordable housing agreement that we inherited. And I would actually, and I think, I love the fact that we are a proud COA town and we're leading the way to drive our affordable housing. I'm very proud of that. And we'll own it, especially when school enrollment has been declining. I think it's a great thing for our community. I will also mention too on the, I know there's a lot of talk about the petition and so forth. And I apologize if there's a sense that we're diminishing the petition, because that's not intention at all. But I can tell you from where I sit as mayor, and all the mayors I talk to, and I'm a big group of mayors, a bipartisan group of mayors, it's a well-known fact that 20% of people oppose everything you do, or anything, not always the same 20%, but anything you do will be opposed by 20% of the people. So when you say that you've got 2,200 signatures, which represents less than 10% of our population, I am telling you, 1,100 of those were done before January 3rd. And the majority of those were done within the first 3 weeks of that petition being out, before information was even being available. We also take a look. I just think I have an opportunity, an obligation to explain. And you mentioned fear-mongering. Well, I'll tell you what fear-mongering is, in my mind, and in respect out of Councilman Dardia. Fear-mongering is sending out false information, putting flyers on windshields, telling people that their South Avenue parking is going to be going away. Fear-mongering is telling everybody we're going to be living in Hoboken and Jersey City, which is absurd. Fear-mongering is telling people that there's going to be, nowhere to park. And by the way, nights and weekends parking, yeah, we have a lot of restaurants that require nights and weekend parking. So I have to say, while we appreciate the efforts of the petition, does not represent a significant majority. And that's in spite of, by your own admission, and my friends who have seen you at their doors, in spite of going door to door, handing out flyers. And I'll tell you, I've copied the emails. I'll just give you an example of some of the emails I got, which is why I'm not surprised when you go to door and people say no one Westfield Place, because they're not informed. And to your own admission, they don't have the time to be. So I get an email from somebody, they'll just tell you, this is why I oppose One Westfield Place. The new parking facilities will now require residents to pay for parking on weekdays and weekends, regardless of the hour. Not true. The train commuters will need to add extra time to their commute. And I'm sorry, that notion about the garage is going to add 20 minutes, who made that up? Do you have facts based upon that, or is that conjecture? And I can tell you that the location, as a former commuter, the location of the South Avenue garage and its proximity to the platform, where commuters can be undercover the entire time, is way preferable than parking on the far side of the South Avenue parking lot and walking through the rain. So, and if you're someone that had to park on the south side, and now you had to commute to the north side, being able to park in the north side garage is a benefit. So this notion that there's 20 minutes to a commute, it's not based upon facts, it's based upon conjecture. And I'll tell you other things I've got, okay, this notion about parking garages being unsafe, that's ridiculous. It's like every single town along the rail line, the majority of them have garages. So you mean to tell me in Summit and Cranford and Metuchen and Ridgewood, all these people are afraid to parking in the garage? That's not what I'm hearing from anybody. So I just say, I think it's a lot of conjecture, and it's not based upon facts. So while I respect the petition and I respect what it's attempted to do, but I have to say, it does not represent a majority of our community.
Mayor.
So, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Mackey is... Councilwoman Mackey's asked for the floor.
I just wanted to address Ms. Goodman, who said that she doesn't think any of us have met with our constituents, and I think that that's a disservice to everybody on this dais who have held multiple sessions at the preview center, in people's living rooms, at coffee houses, nights, weekends. We invest a significant amount of time, and while the room has cleared out now, there were people in this room that I personally have met with more than once. So you can dislike the conclusions we have come to, but please do not disparage the time we have taken away from our families to meet with any person who has wanted to meet with us. I don't think any one of us have denied anybody the opportunity, a phone call or a meeting.
Mayor, may I?
Sure.
There is a school board election in April. There's still time to put this on the ballot. If you're so confident this is what the direction that Westfield wants to go, let's just put it on the ballot in April. Election's a few weeks away.
Well, I'm sorry.
We could put that on the ballot.
So I'm going to let our town attorney address that. And once again.
Yeah, not only is a referendum, a non-binding referendum illegal, but if it were in some way legal, it couldn't be put on the April school board ballot because the requirement of the non-binding referendum law in NJSA 19:37-1 requires that it be put on the next ensuing general election. That's the language. And the next general election is in November, so it couldn't be put in the April ballot if you wanted to do the very bad idea of having a non-binding referendum on a redevelopment plan.
But we could
be unlawful.
This council could vote to put it on the ballot if we wanted to. Right, Tom?
Yes, you may have the floor, sure.
I was wondering if the town attorney could come back to the mic, because there's another question about the referendum that I think it would be important to address, since Mr. Laporta referenced again the opinion that he got from a pro bono law firm. But the question that was asked of the attorney was not if you ask an attorney a question that isn't
I'm not
the
certain.
right question, then you're not going to get the right answer.
Yeah, I'm not certain what the question was asked of Ms. Steinhagen, whom I've worked with before. Actually,
I think he read it tonight.
we took a case to the New Jersey Supreme Court together, but clearly the question asked to Ms. Steinhagen involved a question about the municipal land use law and its statutory prohibition against referenda. But the question asked didn't pose the question in the sense of a redevelopment law. The redevelopment statute has a different referenda section with different referenda language, and that language specifically says that notwithstanding any other provision of law, there can be no referendum. And that notwithstanding language means that notwithstanding what exists in any other statute in the state of New Jersey code book, including the non-binding referendum law. So apparently the question wasn't asked correctly of Ms. Steinhagen, but in fact, the A&P case that she cites, she's correct to cite to that under the municipal land use law, but that case didn't involve a redevelopment project, and it didn't involve the question of the redevelopment law. Councilman LaGrippo?
No.
I thought you had a question. Sorry.
That's good. I was just saying that if we really wanted to, the council could vote on this and take it to.
I wouldn't counsel you to do that.
Well,
because
we have a record number of lawsuits already, so what's another lawsuit?
Mark, we're not going to do
I
something
wouldn't
that's...
recommend.
But thank you, Tom,
You're
for
welcome.
answering the question. But I also want to add on to that we have known for a long time that it wouldn't be advisable for us to go to referendum on this, whether it was lawful or not. But that was the whole reason why we have been so public and open about this process, because we've been inviting you to give the feedback that we've been taking into account and has been incorporated into the plan that was approved tonight.
We've been
So
consistent in the
I just think
legal
it's
advice.
important to note that we're not hiding behind a legal opinion or an illegality around a non-binding referendum. Exactly the opposite.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I think we're going to move on to.
Actually,
yes, go
Mayor, if
ahead.
you don't mind, since
No,
I'm up here, I
please.
just did want to address Mr. Boyce's
Oh, please,
question.
thank you. Yep.
With respect to the vacant and abandoned modifications that are being done here tonight. And it's very late at night to be talking about a vacant and abandoned ordinance, so I'll be as brief as I can. As the council heard in the conference session and as the Code Review Committee discussed at great length, the changes that are being made to our vacant and abandoned ordinance are being made as a result of certain significant changes to state law, particularly with respect to foreclosure actions. So the state in 2022 changed the foreclosure laws to require that creditors who initiate foreclosure proceedings on commercial properties notify municipalities that the properties are in foreclosure, and to provide the municipal clerk with a listing of all commercial properties in the municipality in which foreclosure actions are currently pending. What municipalities, of course, find is that its properties in foreclosure and that are bank-owned are the ones that are the most difficult, if I can put it that way, from a property maintenance perspective. And so the state law requires banks or foreclosure entities to notify municipalities of that fact. We have a vacant and abandoned registration ordinance, which we use as another tool. We have a property maintenance code ordinance, which we use as a tool, and we have a vacant and abandoned ordinance, which we use as a tool. And so I don't want there to be a misunderstanding. There is a requirement that people or property owners in this town who own a defined vacant and abandoned property register with the town. If they don't do that, they can be fined and penalized for doing so. So it is a tool by the municipality to make sure that if there is a property that is in bad shape, if it's vacant, if it's abandoned, if it's dangerous, and this is a health, safety, and welfare ordinance, that we know about it, we know who the owners are, and it's on our list so that we can go to them if there's a problem, both in terms of the maintenance or if there's a health and safety problem as well. To answer the specific question, we've had 6 self-reporters who register with the town clerk. We currently have 3. As a result of this ordinance change, and in particular as a result of the change in state law, we will have many, many more registered vacant and abandoned properties. So I just wanted to give you that clarification.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, can I just one last quick comment. I want to address Mr. Smith's comment for a moment. We do have AEDs at all of our parks. I don't know why he's referring to the fact we don't. We did that many years ago, as well as our buildings. Right outside this office right now is AED on the wall. So that's something we've done quite a bit.
So AEDs are already in all of our municipal parks?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I would like to move on to bills and claims. So Councilman Hapgood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move bills and claims the amount of $607,764.30.
We have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Mackey. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Next, reports of standing committees, Finance Policy Committee. Councilman Hapgood.
Thank you again, Mayor. I have 5 resolutions, 4 of which I'd like to move as a package. A resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for dog licenses for January 2023. A resolution authorizing the CFO to refund Recreation Department fees. Third, a resolution authorizing the CFO to issue warrants for special district taxes. And 4, a resolution authorizing the CFO to issue warrants for Union County open space taxes.
May I have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Root. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried.
I'd also like to move a resolution authorizing the CFO to make a budget transfer.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Scott, Katz. Any discussion? Ms. Katz. Please call the roll. Councilwoman Hapgood?
Yes.
Councilman Parmalee? Councilman LaGripa? Councilman Katz?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey?
Yes.
Councilman Contract?
Yes.
Councilman Dardia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Root?
Yes.
Mayor Brindle? Yes, this motion is carried. Next is the Code Review and Town Property Committee, Councilman Contract.
I'd like to move general ordinance number 2023-04 on first reading, an ordinance amending the town code as it relates to vacant and/or abandoned properties.
May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Hapgood. Any discussion? Please call the roll. Councilwoman Hapgood?
Yes.
Councilman Parmalee? Councilman LaGripa?
Yes.
Councilman Katz?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey?
Yes.
Councilman Contract?
Yes.
Councilman Dardia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Root?
Yes.
Mayor Brindle? Yes.
I'd also like to move general ordinance number 2023-05 on first reading, an ordinance amending the property maintenance code of the town of Westfield.
May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Root. Any discussion? Please call the roll. Councilwoman Hapgood?
Yes.
Councilman Parmalee? Councilman LaGripa?
Yes.
Councilman Katz?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey?
Yes.
Councilman Contract?
Yes.
Councilman Dardia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Root?
Yes.
Mayor Brindle? Yes.
And lastly, I'd like to move general ordinance number 2023-06 on first reading, an ordinance amending the sidewalk cafe ordinance of the town of Westfield.
May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Katz. Any discussion? Please call the roll. Councilwoman Hapgood?
Yes.
Councilman Parmalee? Councilman LaGripa?
Yes.
Councilman Katz?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey? Yes. Councilman Contract?
Yes.
Councilman Dardia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Root?
Yes.
Mayor Brindle? Yes. Councilman Katz?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move a resolution to award contract for various landscape materials for the Department of Public Works.
May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Root. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Mackey, second. Seconded by Councilman Hapgood. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried, and this meeting is adjourned.